The story begins in the library of the University of Chinese Traditional Medicine, Jiyang. A man was picking out a book but couldn't find the one he wanted. Behind him was a man with gray hair who said the top shelf was the 10th book on the left. He was surprised, for the book he needed was indeed there. The man thanked the stranger and asked how he knew it was her he was looking for. He recognized the man with gray hair standing before him. But suddenly his pendant began to glow. The stranger's hood fell from his hair. A book floated in front of him. It was a book with the title, Secrets of Pinhoo Pulses, and it landed right in his hand. The man with gray hair said goodbye to the boy and said he knew he would be okay, because he would be back here in 2,500 years. The teacher said that there would be a final exam in the next class, and said to pay special attention to Secrets of Pinhoo Pulses. He hoped they would prepare well and get excellent grades. Some of the students started to object, as they had just finished this topic yesterday. The instructor reassured his students and said that whoever gets the highest score, he will teach him the 4 components of diagnosis. After that, the lesson was over. The students said that Professor Lee Kemen is a doctor of the highest rank. The boy said that among all the students he had no equal. The man with the gray hair knew that the 4 components of diagnosis included examining, listening, interviewing, and palpating the pulse. The technique had been in development for a long time. 2 guys said there was a chance of a top score. The protagonist called them Jinfan and Sunchin, and called them masters of conversation, or better yet, something to honor. Someone shrieked at his words. He said the man with gray hair had transferred from the Institute of Western Medicine. The protagonist didn't pay attention and told his friends to go back to their bedrooms, to which they agreed. The other man was furious at being ignored and put down for nothing. Jin Fong had picked up on the fact that the protagonist had become somehow strange, because he didn't like to go back to the dorm. Sun Chi confirmed, and also said that he had changed his coloring to gray. His friends didn't realize whether he had grown up or aged. The main character's name is Su Ye, and he is a 4th-year student. In fact, he is already 2,500 years old. 2,500 years ago, it traveled to the deep antiquity of the world and has survived into modern times. After his rebirth, his jade pendant became part of the flow technique, a technique that could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. When he mastered this technique, he obtained eternal life. Since ancient times, he has traveled many roads and seen many people. But regardless of the eras or the empire, war and strife always surrounded him. It was only for the hopeless chance of returning that he hid wherever he could and avoided many human contacts. Books became his best friends. He had looked through countless canons, but he still hadn't found an answer on how to go back, so he was left to wait. The next day, just as the teacher had said, the exam began. 2 pairs or 90 minutes are allotted for writing it. This was actually not enough time for the students, but the instructor said the time went on. Somebody was all nervous, and some were just slacking off. But for the protagonist, the exam was not difficult. After all, Flo had another ability that allowed him to collect images of anything in the spiritual palace. That's where all the books he's ever read go to. It was his palace of memories, with the knowledge he has accumulated. The next day, the teacher was annoyed because his group had written poorly. But there are some good works too. He congratulated Logang for he scored 90 points. He also wished him to put even more effort into his studies in the future. Luogong rejoiced. He said he has personal training with the professor in his hands, and no one compares to him. He asked the professor when they could start training. The professor told him to take his time, as he didn't have the best score, and told him to sit back down. He asked about Su Yi. Luogang was surprised to be named, that he was from the Institute of Western Medicine. He couldn't believe that the main character had overtaken him.
The teacher showed a sheet where Su Yeo had exactly 100 points.
The other students didn't understand how he did it, since it wasn't like he could memorize Pulse Secrets of Pinhoo by heart. Sun Chi said that they had underestimated them for nothing, but suddenly chalk flew into his head. The professor congratulated Su Yeo and told him to come to the reception center. He will personally train the protagonist in the 4 components of diagnosis. Jin Fan to go have a blast. Sun Chi asked if they were going to Xiaoyuzhuang again, but Jin Fang had a better idea. He pulled out 3 tickets and asked if they knew what it was. It was an invitation card for the centennial celebration of the Mengxing Music Conservatory. Sun Chi asked where Jin Fan got it from. He replied that it was a secret. It seemed to Su Yue that Xiaoyuzhuang was better, but his friends objected and said that the music conservatory was better, for there were many beauties there. And perhaps they could even see the Baichu sisters. They looked at the time, and they were probably already running late. They came to the Manson Conservatory of Music. There really were a lot of girls there. While his friends looked around, the protagonist said nothing. His friends shrieked with joy that this was a definite paradise. Near them walked the two girls who had been Mancina's first beauties, namely the Baichu sisters. The two men thought that luck was definitely with them. The Baichu sisters were so beautiful. The protagonist realized that they were indeed special. They were surrounded by a pure aura. Earlier they would have become strong warriors. But now they were just ordinary people. Suya felt that someone was absorbing the aura on purpose. He didn't expect to see such a thing in modern times. It was a living aura warrior. They were masters who relied on the energies of heaven and earth to amplify themselves. Their abilities were very different from those of ordinary people. While traveling, the protagonist often encountered such warriors. The ancient times were considered a golden time for masters. The earth and sky were overflowing with aura. Because of this, there used to be many strong warriors and warlords. But much has changed, and industrialization has weakened the natural aura, leading to the decline of aura warriors. By this time, the aura continued to weaken, and it was almost impossible to encounter aura warriors anymore. The protagonist noticed someone approaching the Baichu sisters. Suddenly, he reached for the purse of one of them. Then he stole it and started running. It turns out that this person who absorbed aura warriors turned out to be a thief. Suyue didn't think that aura warriors had fallen so low. Another sister chased after him and yelled at him to give her sister's bag back. She told the other to call the detective back. The other girl asked if she could handle it. She replied that she could handle it because she had a plan. She asked to do what she said she would do. The other listened to her and told her to take care of herself. The girl called back to Detective Wang and said she needed help. The K-Squad will be arriving soon with people wearing goggles. The protagonist guessed that this K-Squad was a special unit of aura warriors. He was getting more and more interested. The girl has to meet the detective and the K-Squad first, but she was worried about her sister, so she ran after her. When she entered the building, her sister was lying on the floor. The girl asked if she was okay, but she didn't notice the man who was hiding. He suddenly lunged at her and punched her in the stomach. She fell. The man said they were just ordinary people and told the girl not to stick her nose where it wasn't asked. It was too stupid to think she could catch him. Now all he had to do was blow the K-Squad away. Suddenly, the main character came in through the window and asked if it was wasteful for an aura warrior to use power for petty theft. The thief turned around and was surprised. This thief, whose name was Mao Zi, was a first-grade third-ranked thief. He wasn't good enough to be called an aura warrior. The thief wondered how he had time, since he didn't even feel him. Suyo jumped to the ground. The man told him to get lost. The protagonist said those were the usual words of a low-grade villain. The thief was surprised. His hand was covered in a white aura, so he attacked Suye, telling him to die. He left a mark with his punch, but the protagonist ducked and ended up behind him. Suye smiled and asked if he had lost someone. The thief was about to throw another punch at him, but the man easily dodged it. He led a counterattack and hit it lucky. The man flew away from him, and he punched him in the stomach again. The thief fell to the floor. He asked where the guy came from. The protagonist replied that he just didn't like to watch girls being beaten. He identified himself as a regular guy. Mauzi didn't believe that it was an ordinary guy. He thinks it's a new K-Squad fighter who is even stronger than him. He had no way out, so he has to use the ace up his sleeve. He asked the protagonist to spare him and gave him the device developed by the Baichu family with the support of China. He also said that the girl had already called the police and he should run away now. He said he would go, but his hand rested on his shoulder. Suyo told him to wait. He looked intimidating and asked why they couldn't talk a little longer. The man disagreed. The thief lay battered on the ground. One of the sisters came to her senses. Special K-Squad has arrived. He held the device in his hand and thought, what's the big deal about it? After all, it's just regular VR goggles. He decided to borrow it for a couple days to play games. Detective Wang spoke with the governor and said that using the Mensen students as bait was a bad idea. A girl approached him. She said it was her and her sister's decision, and that it was their fault. They don't want the fruits of their grandfather's work to fall into the wrong hands. The detective said, I don't blame myself. He's here to help them. She thanked him. She also said the VR glasses weren't taken by K-Squad. She saw that man. She said it was a student who came to the party. The man thought that there must be some mystery behind these glasses. After all, they were custom-made for the country and designed for aura warriors. His friends came over. One of them asked how he could have left them there. The other said that he had come back to study. They were very surprised when they saw he had exclusive VR goggles for Fantasia. Jin Fan said that he didn't know that he was playing secretly from everyone, and they haven't waited for their points yet. The protagonist replied that he decided to give it a try, since they keep talking about Fantasia. He also said he doesn't understand what's interesting about these games. They told him that a large-scale VR game had been developed 2 years ago. It was warmly received by players for its fully immersive feel and easy controls. It features a giant open world with a large degree of freedom where players write their own stories. The protagonist replied that he realized it wasn't just a game. He also offered to discuss it later, because he had a class with his professor on Monday and needed to prepare. They also said that they met a professor, and he asked them to give him something. Tomorrow, the protagonist will have to go to his clinic. After all, he will personally teach the 4 practices of medicine. The girl was taking a shower in her house. Then she went out and brought the tiger cub that her sister had forgotten in the bathtub. She said she would put it on the table and asked me not to forget it next time. Her sister wanted to apply the ointment to her bruise herself, but she wondered why he was still so big. The girl suggested that her sister try Chinese medicine, because Western medicine doesn't work. The Baichu sisters came to Dr. Li's medical clinic, that is, the professor who would be teaching Suyeo. The doctor told them to pass and asked for names. The girl with long hair introduced herself as Baichu Yiran. The girl with short hair introduced herself as Baichu Yizhan. The protagonist wondered what they were doing here. He was wearing a hood, but there's a chance they saw his face. He thinks it would be bad if they recognized him. Suyeo said his grandfather is back and his mom is calling for dinner. The doctor said his grandfather was here just yesterday. He told the man not to talk his teeth in and show him what he had learned in a month. The protagonist wanted to object, but the teacher said there was no excuse in the path of medicine. Suyeo seemed like he had gotten bigger. The teacher also asked if he had been fooling around all month. He had no other choice, so he put on the mask. The doctor introduced his student and said that despite his age, he was an excellent doctor and would examine the girl today. The man asked what was bothering them. Yiran told me that she'd been hit by a bicycle a month ago. She used a Western suit, but it never helped. Yizhan said that a month ago she had fought with a big brown bear in the forest. Then he swung at her and she flew away. The main character remarks that this girl has a strange sense of humor. Even if it's true, no one would believe it. Suyeo checked his pulse and said he understood. The professor asked his thoughts. The man said that Yiran's blood was blocked, so a massage and cleansing was needed. As for the younger one, she wants to skip classes and came here to pretend to get a certificate. The girl said no. The professor asked if the protagonist could give a massage. He answered positively. My youngest started protesting the massage from the male doctor. The protagonist was surprised that anyone else cared about the gender of the doctor right now. The younger one yelled that if he did anything to her sister, she would tear him apart. But Suho is more concerned about Yiran, because that girl has been watching him since she walked in. It's like she can see right through him. The girl apologized for the trouble her sister had caused him. She also said that her sister was just too worried about her. Yizhan recommended this clinic because she had read a lot of good reviews on the internet. He replied that it was nothing, and he would surely cure her. But at the sweet sight of her, even his heart trembled. The girl thought about it, because it seemed to her that she had already seen this doctor somewhere. He showed her where to lie down. Also, if she felt any discomfort or pain, that she should be sure to tell him. He saw her bruise. Su Yue realized that it was an aura. That aura was from that thief. All of his chaotic aura had accumulated in one place, so it was no wonder it took so long for the bruise to go away. Injuries that are caused by aura should be treated by aura too. The girl was hot. But that's the way it should be. After all, the chaotic aura is clustered in one place. He wanted to suck her dry. The girl felt her body trembling as if she was about to fly. It felt good to her. He said it was ready and asked if she could stand up and move. She replied that the pain was gone. He told her to rest and not to get wet or her recovery would slow down. She thanked him. When his back became to her, she remembered. His back is just like that guy's. She said his name and asked if they'd met somewhere before. She walked out of the office and thanked him. He said to come to him if anything happened. The younger sister asked the girl if he touched her. The older one replied that it was fine, and she reviewed the show and also her back felt fine. The girl apologized for mistaking him for someone else. The protagonist replied that he had a rather standard appearance. They said goodbye. He thinks it's a good thing she didn't recognize him. He noticed they were being watched again. He followed the aura and came out on the same guy who had attacked them. He asked if he was following them again. The men said it was him again, but this time he's using tech to teach him a lesson. His body was transformed. He said that the main character would no longer prevent him from wearing glasses. He picked up a trash can and threw it at Sui. He was able to dodge. He was behind him again and asked if this was a new technique his teacher had taught him. He recognized that he had gotten stronger. However, he has 2 minutes to live. The converted man said it was nonsense. That League mentor technique, he won't be able to dodge forever. It was the old villain dialogue again. The main character said it was boring. The man told him to take the fight if he wasn't a coward. He asked if there was anyone else in the League and why no one would help him. Mayotsi replied that his mentor believed in him and would let him act alone. The man continued his attacks, but the guy kept dodging and said he was being tricked. If he was his teacher, he would have kicked him out after a failed mission. The guy was able to tie up the transformed man and asked if he was afraid of being punished for failing, which is why he didn't come back. And now he's trying to make up for lost time. The man broke the ropes and said he would rip out his tongue, after which he struck again. But the protagonist easily dodges the attack. He told him to take his chances if he still could, but in front of this one, he couldn't move. His time is up. The transformed man was struck with pain, and he was back to his old self, after which he fell. He told the guy to finish him off. He grabs him by the neck. The man thinks it's over, for such a master most likely wanted to wear him down to make him part of his power. The guy noticed his pale face with dark blue eyes and asked how long he had been using the technique. He replied that he had only been using it for a month with interruptions. He told him to take out his tongue, which he did. He then asked for a paw, but the man yelled that he was a human, not a dog. Suyo said that luckily his aura was just tangled, and he would untangle it now. The man wondered why he was helping him. The main character said that his technique allows him to greatly increase his aura, but only for 2 minutes. When the time is up, the inflated aura starts to destroy his body. The man thought it was strange, since the teacher hadn't told anyone about it. The boy asked what was wrong with those glasses to risk his life. He pushed him away and told him he wouldn't tell him anything if he even saved him. He would never betray his teacher. The guy hit him and told him that the swallowtail method helps blood circulation in the lower back and relieves pain. The guy replied that he would tell him everything. It turns out that aura has become scarce now, and spiritual herbs, even after searching all the mountains, have become impossible to find. Therefore, many people have given up self-improvement. He pressed him and told him to get closer to the point. The man replied, not so hard, because he couldn't talk. Just when it seemed that the aura warriors would disappear, the teacher appeared. He told them that there was still a new world for the aura warriors to live in. There was not only an abundance of natural aura, but also an inexhaustible supply of herbs and jade. The protagonists thought they were just lost aura warriors, but perhaps they are a powerful organization. The man also complimented that the new world hides the technique of eternal reincarnation. The boy asked what all this had to do with glasses. The man replied that ordinary glasses were useless. The teacher said the key to the new world was in Fantasia, and the only way to find it was with the K-Squad's special VR glasses. But they only wanted to keep them for themselves. Su Yeo told him to try to stand up and asked if it hurt anywhere. The man replied that it didn't hurt at all and was more soothing. The protagonist noticed that he had awakened new qualities and told him to stand there. The man told him to stop chasing the sisters. The man ran after him and told him to wait. He offered him to work together, as they would be able to defeat many aura warriors. But the protagonist refused. He called him a worthless actor, and he knows he just wants to lure him to his teacher. He also said the man is only alive because he didn't hurt anyone. But if he even tries it again, the aura flash will be the last thing he sees. Despite being held by the man's collar, he said how handsome he was. The main character came home. While he was working, his friends went out to play. He thinks it's nonsense if eternal reincarnation is connected to the game. He thinks he should study to benefit the world in the future. He has no time for games, but he ended up going to play a VR game. The game started up and the identification was complete. The character's regeneration completed and he was led into Fantasia. The guy wondered if that was what Fantasia was. Behind him was a wild boar. The smell of grass and branches seemed real to the protagonist. He could not believe that it was so real. Cabana lunged at him, but the protagonist didn't seem to care. He sees that the leaf texture is too realistic to be fake. Normally, the game should teleport newcomers to the village. He drew his sword and chopped up a boar. The guy said he was too noisy to be noticed. He sensed something. There were more boars behind him. He got into a fighting stance. He took them down easily. Meanwhile, an arrow flies into the 10th level magic monkey's head. It was the older sister. Then a small hologram of the younger sister appeared and told her that the case about the VR glasses had been completely handed over to Detective Wang. She replied that he had said he would send all his subordinates to look for it. She asked if it was such a big deal to send everyone. She replied that she didn't know all the details and said to better focus on the monsters. The younger one replied that the older one couldn't talk during the battle. She said she was super strong and showed her already. Her sister stopped suddenly, and she asked what was wrong. They saw the boars scattering. The younger one asked why there were so many wild boar corpses, and she thought it was some kind of event. The older one replied that she didn't think so. It's not an event, because looking at them, you can tell they are killed by the player in one hit. Yuran wonders who's capable of that. Suddenly, a system message window appeared. It said that a game event was starting in honor of the opening of the servers. All players who have reached level 10 or higher can join by going to the event location. There will also be gifts and rare gear waiting for them. Yizan said she wanted to join too, but she only had level 9. The eldest replied that she could do it another time. She also said she would try her luck at the event, and then they would split everything up. Junior said her sister was the best, and the older one can still find the player who killed those boars. The unidentified man said, "This is just crazy." He was trembling but still holding the sword, but he was cut in half by an unknown man in a trench coat. The girl thought she could find the boar killer, but she didn't understand what was going on here at all. Yuran knows that regeneration is very slow here, as even a scratch took a long time to heal. She's trying to figure out what his damage is, what's keeping him from healing, and she's also activated the Farsight skill. She saw the characteristics of the unknown man in the cloak. He was level 35, so it wasn't surprising that recovery was slow. This was already a suicide, not an event. Suddenly he disappeared, and appeared right before her eyes, swinging at her. The main character came to her rescue and blocked the attack. He asked if it was the boss of the event, because the map is so big and he had been looking for this place forever. She told him to stop because his level was at least 20 more than theirs. He recognized it was her again, and also hoped she didn't recognize him. The guy lunged at him and said he hoped she would help. The boss attacked him, but the man jumped up. He said his movements were like his acquaintances. After all, he's using the same technique, but usually his acquaintance doesn't like to hide his face. With those words, he cut the boss. Suyeo said that he was a butcher and played the violin well. He was killed in such a way that no one recognized him except his relatives, but he was a strong and righteous man. He stabbed him right in the chest and said he was just a bad imitator. A system announcement appeared, congratulating player Suyeo on his first victory in the raid event, as well as gaining his first level 30 in fantasy. The girl was surprised that he had gotten a double achievement, because he had killed the boss of the event and leveled up from the other players. She wondered who he was. He was given an award. It was an item of superior quality and an occasional gift. He decided to open them and take a look. A dragon slayer's sword and an ancient page with a drawing fell out. He didn't realize if it was him being so old that he didn't understand if all this stuff needed to be worn, or if the youth was so advanced. He wondered if a random gift would make him happy. A drawing of Haran fell out to him. He wonders if this is really what the guy was telling him about, and if there's a new world in Fantasia. The man told Detective Wang that all of the SWAT team personnel were in position. He asked if the detective thought the kidnapper might be in cahoots with the K-Squad. The detective replied that if that was the case, it was the right time to take this gang down. The guy was buying his food with more spice and acid as usual. The employee asked him if he had already got a girlfriend, as he had not seen him for a long time. He replied that he had not, because he had not had time to do that during his internship. But suddenly he smelled an odor. It was a jade, but it couldn't appear in the city if it lacked aura. He immediately ran at the smell. The worker told him that he couldn't even wait for food. The protagonist said to give it to someone, but the man replied that no one would eat it but him. He went into the bathroom and found the spiritual jade. Spiritual jade is formed by absorbing spiritual aura over a long period of time. He helps aura warriors strengthen themselves, but in his time, he is extremely rare right now. But it will help him get one step closer to his goal. The protagonist realized that someone was also in the room and told him to get out. It was the detective. He said that no one could resist the lure of jade, and he didn't underestimate the guy, for he was able to spot him. He marveled that there were still masters who possessed such a dense aura. The detective asked if he had stolen those glasses at the anniversary party at the Manson Conservatory. But he's not going to get away with it today. The guy's surrounded. Everyone but the detective attacked him, but it's like he's vanished, and appeared behind them and also struck them on the neck. They were in his way. The guy asked him why he was standing back, or if he was as weak as they were. The detective wondered when such a man had shown up in the K-Squad. He said he wanted to be gentle with him and then forget about the incident. He asked him to tell him where the leader and the glasses were, but he said to do him a favor, because he's not even 30 yet, and he's already calling him uncle. He attacked the guy. The guy used a technique after which splinters appeared. The detective marveled at that. Suyue was able to stop his fist and asked which leader he was talking about. He did, however, remark that his manner of asking questions was very interesting. He was able to bring the detective down. A light circle formed near his fingertip, as if gathering aura from the surroundings. The detective realized how unconcerned he now looked. But to his surprise, the guy discovered his acupuncture points. The protagonist said Ren's veins are clogged, so it's not surprising that the aura isn't flowing, but the clog is broken. He also complimented that after discovering the acupuncture points, the detective will take it to the next level. Detective Wang was a bit perplexed. After all, he had helped the enemy become stronger, and wasn't he from the K-Squad? Though the detective mustered all his strength, he was defeated in one blow, and he doesn't remember seeing a dossier on this mastermind. He must make him an ally before he becomes an enemy. He said that given his abilities, he was not K-Squad. However, he asked him to go with him to the detective bureau. The guy asked what would happen if he refused. The detective replied that he would have to make him, and if he got hurt, it was his own business. The main character has noticed that his aura is already stronger, and is releasing through acupuncture points very smoothly. He's really gotten better, but it still wasn't enough to defeat the protagonist. He kicked him. He leaned back in his stall. Su Yeo said that his aura flowed smoothly and released naturally, meaning the treatment worked as it should. The guy will take the jade as payment. He never thought it was possible to use jade as bait for a glasses thief. The protagonist thinks it's just a cover, and the clues are in the game, especially the parchment dropped earlier in the game with the Howren pattern. The guy also mentioned that the game has information about the new world. Suyo thinks that these people might have the same goal as him, namely to get information about the eternal reincarnation technique. The detective woke up and couldn't understand how he'd lost consciousness, or why things had gone wrong again. One of his men said they thought the government had banned Detective Wang from using his aura. He replied that the glasses thief was the first to use it. The detective realized that his strength had increased 3 or 4 times, but it still wasn't enough. He didn't understand who the stranger was. In Grapevine Cave, in a game of fantasy, the disciple told his teacher that Mao Tzu had been gone for several days, and he was worried about him. The teacher reassured him that her people had already found out his whereabouts. The disciple asked about the punishment. She, on the other hand, answered his question with a question about what he was saying. She said they are all her family, and she can't punish her family. The student thanked his teacher and left. Afterward, she said animal testing has already begun, and once they catch Mao Tzu to try it out on him. She asked the man behind her if the torture was over. The one replied that he did, and he held the student by the hair. She asked the student how things were going. He could not answer her properly. A man killed him. The woman called him useless meat. The man asked how to proceed since there are no leads. She replied to leave it at that. They should get the parchment that fell out of the event, because it's an important clue. Suyo looked at his friends, and they seemed to have bought fantasy glasses as well. Anyone who is in the game accumulates aura using breathing techniques. This game is really something. The protagonist decided to take the opportunity to improve his Kauren. With the jade he found, he could move to the next level. He returned to his palace of memories. All he has is the parchment with the pattern from the game. He doesn't know where the Horan pattern in the game came from, but suddenly the Horan pattern began to shine. A mini-map of the Forest Secret Realm that is in the fantasy game opened in front of him. He wondered where his memory palace had gotten part of the map from, since he didn't remember seeing it in the game. Suyo thinks someone has been spying on him and wants to bring him there. He decided to try and follow his wish, and maybe he could figure something out. The guy made it to the northern forest. The forum said that the secret kingdom could be found using a hidden map. He was chopping down trees, and the stones behind which other people sat. He said they were bad spies and to get out. An unfamiliar man asked what to do. His boss replied that everything was fine. I mean, he's alone and he's easy to kill. He was attacked. They used the life-sucking fire elemental skill. It's self-destruction. But I just chopped them up, because it's really dangerous. A man with a scar on his eye came out to him and told him to give him the parchment, after which he would give him a painless death. The protagonist realized that he too was after the parchment. The guy replied that he wasn't in the mood today and struck him with his sword. He also said that using people as bombs is inhumane, and this he will never forgive. The man fell to the ground, defeated by the protagonist. Suddenly, he heard a woman's voice yelling out where he was. He replied that her people were already dead, and told her to come down to him. She didn't think he would be so difficult. She got a system window. There was an unknown number. The woman shouted to the man on the ground to stop sprawling. The man transformed and was covered in fire. The protagonist realized they still had an ace up their sleeve. He wanted to respond to the man's attack, but he saw the arrow. It pierced that man. Those people used it to escape. It was the arrow that Baichu Yiran let go so that she would no longer be indebted to him. She thinks that's enough. Yiren didn't understand why she cared about him. The importance of parchment is unknown to the average player, and this group was well organized. She thinks it was the K-Squad. If that's really true, she needs to tell Detective Van about it. She contacted the detective and told him she was in Fantasia and their target had just been attacked by the K-Squad. He replied that they were already tracking them. The detective said there was another important reason. After all, they found the man who stole the glasses. He thanked her for the information and told her to watch her safety. She rejoiced, for her efforts had not gone to waste. In a seemingly abandoned building, there was a man and a woman. The man was raging, for he did not realize who had interfered with his game. The woman said to forget about him, because they had a new order. They will be turned over to detectives if they don't find new information. The man said that how could they get rid of them so easily after all they had done for them? The woman responded that this information is higher level. The man shouted about nationality spying, and at that moment another man who looks young walked in. He heard everything. A man approached him. The young-looking man said that he just came to say that the task of the detective bureau was completed. The woman grabbed the younger man by his mouth, and she was trying to shove some kind of pill into him. She asked if he knew which child was the most obedient. The answer was a dead child. He swallowed it, after which his eyes turned red and saliva spurted from his mouth. The main character was walking down the street and said that this Baichu was really special. He thinks the bruise was serious when he treated her, but she didn't make a sound. Someone approached him and told him to stay put. It was a man and he was from the detective team, and he said that Suyo was detained in a theft case. He asked him to follow him. The detective team found him, though. The protagonist followed him. Surprisingly, they came to the school cafeteria. The man pressed a tile. Something moved backwards. It was a secret door. Suyo didn't know there was a secret base here. The security system looked serious in the building. The protagonist thought that, given all the precautions, they had some important information, and this was his chance to find out more. But he was surprised at what he saw. There were posters hanging everywhere. Someone approached him. It was Detective Wang Hao, and he said that they could finally talk in private. The protagonist couldn't believe it was the same detective. Suyo tried to deny something, but the detective got a good look at him then in the restroom. The detective wanted to show him something interesting. It was a training ground where surprisingly his friends were. He asked what his dorm mates were doing here. The detective replied that their job is to find eligible talent in Fantasia. The guy replied that it's actually possible to do that with VR glasses. He's not sure how it works, but he's seen them perform breathing techniques in the game. Practicing breathing techniques allows them to amplify their aura, and thereby giving them previously unimaginable power. The detective wondered how he knew all this. Yiren Baichu was right, and he really is an amazing person. Wang Hao said that they would move on to the next step. He handed him the phone. He heard a little girl's voice saying that she had been following him for a long time. She knew what he was looking for, and asked if he wanted to help them. Suho asked what he would get out of it. The girl replied that if he would help catch the K-Squad, she would show him where the secret realm was. He agreed to their terms. The thief had been beaten near this building. Some of the offenders said that he had been hiding for months, but now he had come crawling back, and that he should be brought to the teacher later. Someone said he'd be taught a lesson first, but he was approached by the main character to help him, and said they met again. Suyo asked who it was. Maozi replied that they were probably sent by the teacher. But he didn't care about that now because he had to find Xiao. He started to climb the stairs to the top floor and said that he would definitely find Xiao. They came to a yellow door. Mao Tzu asked if Xiao was here and said he was going in. They entered the room, but all they saw was Xiao's pale corpse. The man couldn't believe that it was Xiao who was the one who had this happen to him. He asked what had been done to him, but of course he wouldn't get an answer. The protagonist realized that he had been drugged with aura and medication, and then completely sucked out his energy. It was all done by the K-Squad. The man couldn't figure out what to do. He was shaking and his eyes widened. He remembered the pills. These pills were given to him by his teacher. He wanted to give them to his friend. The main character grabbed his hand and told him to wake up. He also said it's all the teacher's fault that he can't stop talking about. His teacher was just using him. Those pills are poison. They're all his favorite teacher's lab rats. He fell to his knees on the floor and the pills from the jar scattered. He just couldn't believe that they were just rats. Su Yue checked on Xiao. There was almost no spiritual energy left in him, but at least he was still alive. He said that even though he was weak, he could still be saved. The man could not believe that the protagonist could save his brother. It wasn't difficult for Su Yue, since he is studying Chinese medicine. He returned to his palace of memories. He then began searching and a scroll flew into his hand. He found a recipe where he needed dragon bones, marrow flower, and hope herb. It was a pill from his ruined century-old case, so he decided to give it a try. He used compression. A red pill appeared in his hands. He gave the other man the pill. Maoji was surprised that Su Yo was so good at medicine. He said to quickly put the pill in Xiao's mouth. The one did as he was told. His skin wasn't so pale anymore. Xiao woke up and asked what Maozi was doing here. His friend put his arm around him. Su Yo said that it was only a temporary solution, and he was still too weak. Mao Tzu thanked him. He asked what was going on in Unit K and where their teacher was. The thief was about to speak, but didn't have time. A detective showed up and said that following them had really paid off. He said to give them information about the K Squad, and he would provide the best medical services. The police officers detained the thief, and Xiao was taken to the ambulance. Su Yo said to wait. He went up to the thief and told him not to do him any more foolish things for his brother's sake. Mao Tzu replied that he would remember that. Detective Wang Hao came over and praised him, for with his help, they had found an abandoned base and a member of the K Squad. Su Yo asked about the squad because the detective was taking them too seriously. Wang Hao replied that they were experimenting on people. The protagonist said there were other reasons, such as immortality. Detective Wang said forget it, and the promised rewards have already been sent to his home. The protagonist realized that the detective doesn't want him to know much. He must go to the secret realm and find out for himself. After a while, he found himself in a cave in the game. The entrance to the secret realm is inside, so it's no wonder it's so hard to find. As soon as he entered, he saw a large Horan pattern. He noticed the system window. Su Yo got the taming skill but thinks it's some kind of bug. A monster appeared in front of him. It was a long-tailed wolf of unknown level. He attacked Su Yo. The one struck him with his sword, but there was no pop-up or loss of health in front of him. The protagonist didn't know how he could tame this wolf. The wolf attacked him with green fireballs. The protagonist reflected them, after which they punched through the ceiling. It was as if Su Yue heard the wolf in pain. It could be that someone is controlling him. The wolf would attack him again. His attacks were too fast. The protagonist managed to see the rune on his forehead. Turns out he'd seen her before. He realized that the mask was to blame for all of this, and he needed to find a way to destroy it. He grabbed his mask. Su Yo said controlling others is bad. He ripped the mask off and destroyed it. The wolf transformed into some kind of beautiful beast. After that, he was able to tame it. He decided to teach the wolf commands. He had also heard that petting animals felt really good, so he wanted to try it. It was great for him, but suddenly the wolf turned into a little girl. The protagonist didn't know there were monsters here capable of transformation, and he realizes that if anyone had seen him, the police would have been here by now. That's why he can't leave her like this. He put his scarf on her. She ran toward the wall, the protagonist following her, and stomped on her. The letters appeared there. He read that the kingdom of the Ark people is located in the north of Arawan, and they have white body and hair.
This girl is their divine beast.
The Ark people are said to be immortal, and they worship the Hauran. There is definitely a connection between the Ark and the Kauran. Only Ark's people can give him answers, but he still doesn't understand what this all has to do with Fantasia. He knows Detective Wang won't tell him anything, and Maozi better not count. Only the game developers or Baichu's family can tell him anything. Only Baichu's family are blue bloods, so they can't meet so easily. He decided to write Yiren in fantasy. Meanwhile, the girl was riding in the car. With her was Miss Jiang Shen, who decided to guide the girl. The girl said that Yiran was too kind. After all, she almost died trying to expose the K-team. 2 jades aren't worth it. Jiang Shan was the chief inspector of the eastern region. A lot of jade spilled out of her sleeve, and she asked if Yiren needed it. She replied that she was not yet a master of aura. Jiang Shan asked if the girl was thinking of becoming an aura warrior. Yiren replied that she was. She replied that the inspector would help her and her sister practice. The inspector appreciates them very much. But suddenly the car exploded. It was an unknown male. He opened the door. He expected Yiren to be there. As it turned out, it was the man with the scar. Jiang Shan was behind him and said that he was looking in the wrong place. Also, she subbed that a surprise attack was a good idea, but she was with her today. He told her to shut up and ran toward them. But he was bound by blue threads. Jiang Shan asked why, since it was time for him to turn himself into the detective. The man was angry. He said to mind the girl's own business, but to her, it was no big deal. She used her power. Yiren marveled at such power from her one movement. Jiang replied that the spiritual weave blocks the opponent's aura. If he doesn't want to die, he needs to answer her questions. She asked what they needed Yiran Baichu for. The man didn't know where this spirit-weaving child had come from. He didn't want to say anything, and a pill appeared in his teeth. Her thread quickly picked up that pill. The girl said she wouldn't let her use them to increase her aura. He called her a fool after all. Her soul weave only binds her aura, so he just wouldn't use it. He thinks a simple punch will be enough to take her down. Yiren suddenly slapped him on the fragile spot. He cried out in pain. Yiren said that this technique even works on aura warriors. The inspector started laughing and said he screwed up. Yiren said the squad was already operating openly and asked if they were looking for a passage. Jiang called her tongue an enemy. The girl would still find out about it someday. The inspector told me that Fantasia is a projection of another world. It is called the world of mountains and seas that their country has discovered. Extremely rich in spiritual resources. A few years ago, the research department took the initiative. Players selected through the game will lead an expedition. It's like being drafted into the army. She said they need new forces to guard their borders. After all, they have been under pressure from other countries lately, and the K unit may be involved. The inspector asked if she would go to the world of mountains and seas. Jiang replied that yes, she did. Her heart was pounding frantically. If she becomes as strong as the inspector, she will never have to be a burden again. But she remembered she'd forgotten something. She forgot about Suyo in the game where they decided to practice their fighting skills. At the Baichu mansion, she was taking a bath and remembered the promise. She is afraid that he will think she is an unreliable person. But suddenly she heard some sound and decided to look. It was just a fallen vase. She thought it was just the wind. But it turns out someone broke into her room and put a hand over her mouth and told her to be quiet. She bit his finger. Then I saw his face. It was Suyo. Yiren asks why he is here. The protagonist thinks about what to tell her. He's not going to tell her he's here because she missed the game meeting. She decided to call the police. He stopped her. He took the phone from her hand and said he had something important to say. He finally had a chance to tell her a secret, but he just didn't want to let her call the police. Her father secretly contacted teacher Lee about treating a dangerous disease. She didn't even know her father was sick. He replied that her father was secretly seeking treatment so as not to worry the girl. Now she understood why her dad hadn't looked good lately. He threw a sweater over her shoulders and said he was very worried about her father. She actually believed his words. He was surprised that it actually worked. He told her thanks for believing him. Time was very short, and he needed information about the Kaoran. He confessed that he had gotten lost in their mansion. She asked that he couldn't find her father's room. She led him into the room. Yiran shut them in the room, after which she pointed the light at him. He asked what she was doing. She replied that she recognized he was the glasses thief from his jacket. She threw a lamp at him. He pulled back and said he knew it wouldn't go smoothly. After that, he caught the object. He pulled her to him and caught her so she wouldn't fall. Her towel had fallen off. He asked for a moment of attention. Suyo admitted that he did have the glasses, but he was on the detective's side. He advised her to get dressed, or she would catch a cold. That's when her little sister's voice came through. She told him to stay away from Yiran. Yizan wanted to fly in through the window, but suddenly her rope broke. She flew at him. They were all lying on the floor together. They called him a pervert and punched him. The girls tied him up. Yiran called back to the detective. Yiran said she knew he was a bad man. Jiran showed the phone to her sister. She couldn't believe it. The older woman replied that the detective wouldn't lie. They checked his history and apologized for misunderstanding him. He was glad they had come to an understanding. The younger one decided to untie him. Yizan asked if the guards should be called in. The older one said it was their own fault. Junior responded that he was a stranger and he had broken into her room. She also added that she knows that for her protection, she doesn't involve her sister in many things, but Yizan is also worried about Yiran. Yizan said that they are so far apart and she only watches once in a while. She's afraid she won't see her sister again. Yiran calms her down and realizes that she's probably a bad sister. Suho replied that they have a great relationship. Also, he wouldn't bother the ladies with untying the rope, so he did it himself. Yizan called him dangerous and wanted to hit him, but he dodged a punch and bowed to apologize. He said it was his fault for breaking in without waiting to meet him at the game. The younger one marveled that he might feel guilty. Yiran asked how he knew she would be online. He replied that they had arranged to meet. The girls realized that he was the one who was Tsuyo's player. Yizan couldn't believe that a person like him could beat Tsuyo. He replied that they could check his ID number. Yiran replied that she believed. The younger one said he was still the one who broke into their house at night. The senior said that whatever his reason, she would not press charges, but on one condition. Given his skills, he's an aura warrior, so she's counting on him for their future. Yizan replied that it was risky and there were other ways, but the older ones said their parents didn't have time. Yizan agreed. He agreed to this condition. If the two of them aren't disgusted with him, he'll do whatever he can to help. They moved into the dance hall. Yiran asked if there were any results. He replied that they had plenty of aura, but it was blocked. It would also take a little time to open their acupuncture points. It wasn't hard for him, but he would pretend it wasn't. Jiang said it wasn't their fault. He told them to wear something tight, but not to that extent. Suyeo felt that what was best for their variant was dual cultivation, using the outer aura to revitalize the stale one. They shouldn't have a problem with that. Jiang said she had read about dual cultivation in a men's magazine. He realized from their faces that they had misunderstood everything, for modern reading had twisted everything. He said that they had thought of the wrong cultivation and the circle below him lit up. This is an aura-gathering circle. It will help them absorb energy faster. When he presses an acupuncture point, the others around it will glow, and when all of them open, they will increase their rank. The eldest thought that the ancient aura circles were lost. But in fact, the protagonist had just invented it. The jades they provided him were of high quality and should give off a lot of aura, but the process of opening the points would still be difficult. He said it would hurt a little, and they already felt it. The aura absorption is stronger than he expected, and he wondered if the jades would be enough. It's left for him to use his aura. He infused them with aura. The girls glowed with a golden light. They have reached rank 9, so far that is their maximum. He decided to look around their father's study. There was a secret passage in the study.
He was guarded by an old-looking puppet.
He found the information he needed. After all, the game is a link to another world, a world of mountains and seas. It puzzled him that he could exist in both worlds at the same time, and wondered where the passage to the other world was. Suyeo saw the logo of a detective agency. Wang Hao's boss's name is Jiang Shan. She might know the passageway, so he'll have to meet her. Yiren woke up in the bedroom with Yijin lying beside her. She thinks they were carried off by Suyeo. She saw the note, and there was an aura-gathering circle drawn there. He wished them both success, but not to rush their fate. He also signed his full name, and she finally recognized him. The protagonist was walking down the street and noticed his friends. Sunqi said that he was already up. Suyeo didn't understand what he meant. Jinfan was brushing his teeth and saw that he was curled up and sleeping like the dead. But the guy wasn't in the room last night. He said he forgot something in his room and would go to the pairs a little later. Sunqi said it was Sunday. He wondered who could have been his bedfellow. Then he saw it was a long-tailed wolf. She woke up and looked around, and then I went to hug him, but he was on the stairs. That's why they both fell. He asked where she came from here, since she is NPS. He heard voices saying that the donuts today were especially good, and they wanted to get more, but they hadn't done their homework yet. It was his friends who were on their way back. He looked at his phone, and today was indeed Sunday. It would be all over for him if they found out he was hiding the girl. He was thinking about where to hide her. They came into the room and said they had brought him breakfast, but he wasn't in the room and they think he's asleep again. He apologized and said he had moved them to the memory palace, as it was the only solution. Suyeo said that this was his private world and it was safe here. And now he asked her to tell him how she got into his world. She tried to say something, but she just had unrelated sounds. She's a spirit animal, so she doesn't know human speech. A red book appeared in his hand. He wanted to teach her the language. After a while, she was already pronouncing the letters. He told her to stop saying fox, for she was a wolf, not a fox. She struggled to say the word revenge. He asked if she wanted revenge on whoever had put the mask on her. She said yes. He thinks she came from the world of the mountains and seas, so she might know how to get back. He said if she wanted him to help her in her revenge, she should make a contract with him. Suyeo will provide her Oraiki in that world, but she must take it to her home. He said that these are the only conditions and they won't have to pay any more. Their aura will unite. She saw her benefactor's sea of aura and wondered where he got such power from, since he was still so young. She noticed his pendant and wondered where he got it from, after which she kissed him on the forehead. Their contract was done. She called him her master and immortal. He asked how she knew he was immortal, all because she too is immortal and smelled the same odor from him. He told her to rest from her past traumas in the memory palace, and he still had business to finish in this world, after which they would go to the world of mountains and seas. She stopped him, for she had something to say. Besides her master, she senses another immortal. He called her Cheng Huang and asked if she knew who it was and if it was related to his secret of immortality. The girl replied that he did not know, and also said that the master was not his adversary. She wished him to be careful. Suyeo snuck into the detective bureau headquarters. Cheng Huang's map didn't fail. She called out to him. He covered her mouth and told her it was over if they were caught. She replied that even if her master was caught, she could easily save him. He called her a trifle and asked her to be quiet. Suddenly the light turned red. He figured they'd already been spotted. But the girl replied that it wasn't because of them. Up ahead, the two aura warriors are fighting. Xiangshan said that she wouldn't let a woman into the world of mountains and seas. She replied as if she could stop her. The person in charge would never have thought that this little girl was Jiang Shan. Then he saw a portal. It was indeed the entrance to the world of mountains and seas. Cheng Huang suggested he hurry up while they fought. The protagonist noticed that Jiang Shan was still a child, but had already reached rank 9, and her opponent wasn't far behind either. Cheng Huang wanted to sneak in. He told her to come home and that she would be fine. Jiang Shan was thrown back into the wall. A purple-colored fire appeared in the unknown woman's hand, and it was coming towards her. With her attack, she dispelled her fire and stabbed her arm. She referred to this woman as the leader of the K-Squad. Jiang Shan would not allow her to pass on the information about the world of mountains and seas, and even called her a teacher. More specifically, her name is Liu Huan. The woman had gotten her hands on some kind of serum, and now she definitely couldn't let her live. Her skin began to darken. The girl said that color suited her better and called her an old woman. That aura she got from the drug was enough to transform her, and she was now close to level 10. She appeared behind her and wanted to strike, but her hand was stopped by the protagonist. He said that he was familiar with the smell of her medicine, because Xiao and Maozi's medicine had the same smell. Jiang Shan asked how he found this place. He flipped the woman off and said he was just bored, so he wanted to ask the teacher something. The woman didn't understand where he was coming from. Suyo asked her where she got the drug from. The girl pulled his ear and couldn't believe what he was saying. Liu Ziyuan believed that with his rank, he was no match for her. She launched an attack on them. Liu Huan thought that it was all over, but they're still alive. Suddenly, a guy appeared right in front of her and threw a punch. He asked the inspector to forget the whole thing, but she said that from that day on, he was in her charge. Now she seriously asked what he had done to her, for she could no longer estimate her rank. He blocked her techniques. The girl didn't notice his presence at all at first, and now he was disabling skills with one blow. She didn't know who he was at all. The woman didn't believe her skill was sealed, so she wanted to strike. But the inspector quickly tied her up. He looked at her method of binding. She said it wasn't a bad method, to which he agreed. The inspector asked if the teacher would tell what country was behind them. The guy thinks she'd better wipe the blood from her nose first before asking. She didn't say anything, and the inspector said she was aware of her situation. Liu Huan wanted to give her son the best treatment, but he is being held hostage. They figure out how to free him and get the best doctors, so she doesn't have to work for them anymore. She was about to say something, but suddenly a shell flew. He destroyed the gate. Suddenly the woman began to cry. It was probably a side effect of the drug. The passage destroyed Li as well as the drug. Suyo wondered who this unexpected guest was. He didn't know what he should do now. The Baichu sisters were waiting for him to thank him for practicing. He asked what they were doing here. Yiren handed him the package. It was a cookie. Yiren made it, so Yizhen said not to give it to others, no way. He replied that he would definitely try it and thanked her. Jiang Shan appeared from nowhere, saying that he was helping others practice. She said they now had a chance to go to the world of mountains and seas for the three of them. Yizhan asked what was wrong with the first way to enter the world of mountains and seas. Jiang Shan said she would explain a little later, and that the North China region approved the initiative to select 5 candidates each. They 3 among them. The younger one was excited that they would get in. The older one asked if they would nominate as well. Jiang Shan replied that yes, but there are certain conditions. They showed up in the game. There were 2 other participants, and Yizhen wondered if they could be trusted. These were his friends. Sun Qi asked if they would be able to enter the Sea Mountain world if they passed the selection, and if he had heard anything about the rules. Shu Yo replied that the inspector hadn't. The guy apologized for being late. Yiran replied that they were just coming up themselves, and Yizhan said that you can't keep girls waiting. The older one asked who was with him. Jin Fan asked how he met the main beauties of Mengxing. Sun Qi said that he had better give him a heads up and he would have dressed up. Suyo did not understand what was wrong with them. After all, they were not going on a date here. He wanted to introduce his roommates, but they interrupted him. Sun Qi said that he is into basketball, dancing, and rapping. Jin Fan said he was very honored to meet them. They started asking for the author's autograph and offering their help at Yiren's. Yizhan shoved them away from her sister and said they couldn't be trusted. North China's governor Wu Li and an inspector arrived to make the selection. After that, the people selected by the governor appeared. They were Zhou Er, Zhou San, Zhou Yi, Zhou Shi, and Zhou Wu from North China. The inspector began to tell me the rules. First, 3 minutes before the battle begins, players must take positions and discuss team strategy. Secondly, after the time has elapsed, their actions will not be restricted in any way. Third, the entire area is at their location. Players who leave the General Assembly area before the start will be disqualified. Fourth, each team must choose a captain. If the leader drops out, the team will be disqualified. The trial has begun. Yiren was appointed captain. Su Yeo said she would go on a reconnaissance mission, and they needed to guard the captain. She stopped him and said she had something to tell him. Their opponents have been specially trained. Their chances leave a lot to be desired. So whatever happened now, she told him not to force himself. The protagonist was wondering who to start with, but a strong beam was directed in his direction. It was the enemy's cannon, and Zhou thought that the first one was ready. However, that didn't come out powerful enough for him, and he thinks something more is needed for the world of mountains and swords. He wondered if it would be effective if he replaced the railgun with a qigong wave, but Su Yeo appeared behind him and asked what he was drawing. Zhou was startled by this, and so he immediately bounced into the distance. The protagonist only wanted to draw attention to the deficiency of the kidney aura. After all, it was something that needed to be treated. He asked if he was interested in his abilities, and if Su Yeo wanted to try them out again. Although he thinks it would definitely kill him. He let the beam at him again, but the guy stopped him with his bare hands. He made needles, and pointed them right at him, which hit right on target. The opponent asked what he did. Su Yeo replied that he practiced acupuncture and cauterization, and it would help his kidneys. Zhou replied that he had successfully completed the task. After all, he just needed to distract Su Yeo. His comrades should have tracked down his friends by now. Sun Qi was transported to a dream world. Zhou San said that he didn't know his techniques either. But Sun Qi can't get out of here. Sun Qi loudly sneezed a couple times due to the dispersal of his technique. Turns out he's allergic to spirits. He threw a shield at his opponent. He thinks he needs to be more careful with Sun Qi. Suddenly there was an explosion. His opponent immediately shifted and ran towards the sound of the explosion. The governor watched this and said that if Zhou had been a little more serious, he would not have dropped out. Unfortunately, he didn't notice the black shadow appearing beside the North China captain. He decided to borrow his body. Jiang didn't understand why these kids were so difficult to deal with. Zhou Wu said that it was time to finish with them. The blonde man suggested that Zhou Xie use their technique. She asked if he was sure, because if Dr. Liu found out, they would be in trouble. Zhou Wu replied that it's okay since he's not here. They decided to use their Zhuzhong blazing technique. Yiren didn't know where the children got so much power from. No matter how they were today, they were just kids. Besides, they walked without Dr. Su's training. Yiren needs to aim for the head. It was as if the blonde had been waiting for this. He used a flaming palm. Yijian asked if that was it, and said they were just kids. Zhou Wu shouted for her not to underestimate them. Yizhan's hand grabbed her arm, then squeezed and she started screaming. They were busy with Yizhan. Zhou Wu said that he was tough. Shuji noticed Yizhan's smile. She realized that the other had disappeared from their sight. She appeared right behind their backs. Yiren shot up into their hands. Yizhan released and chopped up the golem. They tied up the kids. Yizhan teased the blonde man, and he said that warriors could be killed, but not humiliated. He challenged her to a duel. Suddenly there was black smoke, but Zhou-san managed to use his shield in time. He realized that the children were using a fusion technique. Sun Qi ran up to the girls. He asked if they were injured. Yiren replied that they were saved by Zhou-san. Zhou-san replied that he only saves these two tomboys, and he advises them to leave as soon as possible. Their captain is not in the best of spirits right now. Zhou Yi said if she takes everyone hostage, what will he do? The one who has entered her is waiting for Su Yeo, that is, for his vessel. Cheng Huang appeared and said she had something to report, namely that another immortal has appeared. Su Yeo arrived at the meeting place, but no one was there. He saw the signs of battle and reached for them with his hand. But suddenly his hand was grabbed by black smoke. It spread to his entire body and stiffened him. That's when the North China captain came out and said she was disappointed that they really believed in him. But she spoke of herself in the masculine gender. But that didn't stop the protagonist, and he easily freed himself. After which he struck her. He asked where the others were. The Immortal replied to accept defeat. After all, he'll be able to get them back in one piece. Suho replied that there was nothing stopping them from reminiscing about the past. After which he stabbed her in the arm. He replied that he's pretty good at reading opponents. The protagonist said that his rank wouldn't allow him to summon a spirit without damage. He replied that the temporal soul and body are a moment for the infinite, and eternity is the limit of truth. Guy replied that only a madman would seek immortality in an immoral world. The immortal in her body wouldn't give up and tried to catch him somehow. He took his sword and said that only a madman could defeat time. Black smoke began to engulf him. The immortal replied that in all this time, they had come to only one conclusion. They were enemies forever. To find your true path, you need a new setting and a script to follow to get to your goal. But suddenly, its black dome began to be torn apart by the golden spirit. The boy replied that no matter how much time passed, he was and would remain a lost, pathetic creature. The immortal objected to whichever one of them was still a pathetic creature. Suye thinks that if he has been watching him for a long time, he knows all his techniques. The immortal told him to get stronger. But at her feet came the guy's sword. He threw back his sword and said it was boring. The protagonist asked if he was going to cover all of Fantasia. However, his strength was already running low. He definitely shouldn't have summoned spirits indiscriminately. Suyue's golden spirit shredded his black spirits into pieces. The immortal realized he was stalling, and he grew stronger. He began to dissolve and said he was looking forward to their next meeting. The protagonist said that's not going to happen. There was an explosion. After a while, Yizan woke Yiran up, telling her that the competition was over. Yiran started shaking her and asking her what had happened, and if they had won. Yizan replied that they had won. Suyo took off his glasses. His friends jumped on him. They were worried about him and said that without him, nothing would have been possible. Sun Chi said he was buying them a treat, and Jin Fan said it was like they were reborn today. But the protagonist couldn't help but feel that something was wrong, even if Zhou Yi was immortal. He should question Zhang Shan. His professor asked if he was free this weekend, for he would need company. The guy was surprised by the home visit, as he had no such experience yet. The professor said no excuses and gave him the medical history. The patient's photo looked familiar to him. It was Zhou Yi, who he had fought with back then. She fell into a coma for unknown reasons. A nurse led them to room 307. The professor said Mr. Wu was an old acquaintance of his, and he would call if anything happened. The governor of China was in the chamber. They shook hands, and the governor asked why the professor was here and who it was with him. The professor replied that it was his student. The guy greeted him and wondered what the governor was doing here. The professor told him to disinfect the needle and get started, and to make sure he didn't forget the patient's chart. The professor said that according to records, she never woke up once after the competition. She had a strange heartbeat. Her pulse may not be perfect, but it couldn't have led to a coma. If it's a new incurable disease, that's going to be problematic. Guy replied that he knew why that was so. The professor asked if he had encountered something like this, and if there was anything about it in his ancient records. Suyo said he remembered the method of treatment. The professor said they would monitor the process and he was forbidden to use untried treatments. If there were any problems, they would intervene immediately. He went to the governor and said that the patient had an unusual pulse and he didn't know why. He asked to let his student try it. The governor started protesting and said he couldn't let that happen. The professor calmed him down and told him that he was hasty in his decisions. He called Suyo not an ordinary boy, whose family possessed ancient scriptures that even he had not seen. He knows it's risky, but he has no choice. The governor realized that this guy was not easy, even if his rank was low. He let him try because there might be a chance. He said that Suyo could proceed, but he would not only be responsible for his career, but also for other people's lives. It's really not an incurable disease at all. It's all about the spirit. It was as if her essence was imbued with an evil aura, and its energy was unusually sinister. It sucked out all the energy, causing the girl to be in such a state. Suyo should use his aura. Cheng Huang transmitted that she could sense the immortal's energy. He placed the needles on her forehead and injected his aura. Her heart rate spiked dramatically higher. The governor was getting worried, but he noticed that the guy didn't even change in his face. All the black smoke is gone. Her pulse was getting lower again. The guy said she just needed some rest. The governor checked her pulse, and it was indeed stable. Her complexion and breathing got better. The governor told the professor that his student does have potential. The professor praised him. Suyo said that he was a little stressed out and would go rest. He went out into the hallway. Cheng Huang appeared and said that she no longer felt that aura. The guy replied that they were mistaken and she was a simple person. Cheng Huang replied that she could clearly feel the power of the immortal from her. Suyue said that it was someone else's aura that mixed with her. There is someone else. Cheng Huang thinks that this someone is very devious since he was able to fool them. Suyo said he got the message when her heart almost stopped. The unknown immortal congratulated him, for he had found his clue. The game in this world is over, and will continue in the world of mountains and seas. They were watched by the governor. He turned and asked if she was the one who had asked Li to come on his behalf. Zhang Shan was beside him. Zhang Shan replied that his subordinate was saved and he owed her. The governor said her goal is completely different, and she wants Suyo. She replied that in the world of mountains and seas, practitioners of folk medicine would be all over gold. She also added that the guy was interested in the governor. After a while, Baichu's sisters, his friends, and he found themselves near the gate that is in East China. Sun Qi said that they would get rich. Jin Fan replied that his family was already quite wealthy. Yiren asked if everything was in place with Detective Wang. He replied that Jiang Shan had disappeared somewhere, and now he was leading the team. But first, he decided to remind them of the cardinal rule. In the world of mountains and seas, the survivor is considered the winner. Fantasy is just a simulation. On the other side, death will be final. In addition to the animals they saw in the game, there will be others waiting in the world of mountains and seas. Yizan said that she had heard that there were cities in the world of mountains and seas. She asked if they would be safe there. The detective replied that she was very wrong. After all, the cities there are considered the most dangerous places. That world is no better than theirs, and the laws are imperfect. Now there are not only their forces there, but also those of other countries competing with each other. The protagonist didn't think the situation was so complicated. Perhaps the Immortal is hiding there. At last they entered the gate. Someone picked up a fluctuation in the input. Visitors from the east will be arriving soon. The established order is more inefficient. New rules for resource allocation will be introduced. It all starts with the vessel. It was a meeting. Someone was saying that the east entrance had been destroyed and what Jiang Shan would say in his defense. This time, she was not empty-handed. She said that the person who caused the accident was Lu Huan, who is the head of the K Squad. They also analyzed the drug and found out that they were manufactured overseas. She thinks there's a spy on the investigation team. The unidentified man asked how she would explain Suyu's appearance at the accident scene, and if she was sure he was not a foreign agent. Jiang Shan replied that he was an ordinary graduate student according to the result of the inspection. He had participated in operations under the leadership of the K Squad, but he was not involved in Country A. However, his behavior is questionable, because he used techniques of different ranks but came out victorious. She thinks he inherited the techniques from that unknown person in the mountains. The boys finally entered the world of mountains and seas. The detective welcomed them here. He said that their country had mastered 6 areas, namely East City, North City, Northeast City, Northwest City, Southwest City, and South City. He also said that the spiritual energy here was enough to pump quickly. Suyu's on the radar. The protagonist replied that he had raised the rank by 2. The detective was surprised that it was so fast. The guys started asking how he did it. The guy replied that it came out by accident, and he felt that he was about to make a breakthrough. The detective said to stop talking, and he would take them to the errand room. This was the first time Yizhan had heard of him. The protagonist has noticed that there is a lot of aura here, and it reminds him of the Chunkyu era. Just by being here, he's gaining rank. He really hopes the Immortal's investigation goes smoothly. They arrived at the errand room. Detective Wang said that the spiritual jade acted as experience and currency, and could be obtained by completing different tasks. In front of them was a screen with the same tasks. He also said the bracelets they wear have information on them, including a number. It is also convenient to view task information through them and send a signal for help if they find themselves in danger. Suwei saw a high-level mission where you had to catch a beast. Suddenly, a girl appeared and asked which one of them was Suyo. The main character didn't hide. A girl immediately came up to him and called him a pampered child, even if he took first place in the test. She suggested he have a duel and asked him how much gold he had. Sun Qi started to object and asked how dare she. The girl was about to hit him for he was in her way, but Suyo stopped her fist and said that he agreed to the duel. She rejoiced at that, also said to go to the arena. Yiren asked the detective if he would stop them. He wasn't going to do that. There are no norms in the world of mountains and seas. It's all about power, and the winner takes it all. Everyone was being beckoned into the arena, for the first battle between a rookie and a warrior from eastern China was about to take place. The crowd was screaming for the girl to set the newcomer down and for them to start fighting already. The girl said she would give him a 3-punch head start. He replied that he would give her the same head start too. She said he would regret it. She thought his resolve would wane after her blow. He thinks it's a pretty good shot for a young girl. She attacked him from behind. But even from this blow, he successfully dodged it. Suyo said she has good reactions, but she's in too much of a hurry. Finding a weak spot shouldn't be difficult. She tisked and wanted to throw a punch, but his fingers quickly reached her neck. He asked if she wished to continue. She replied that she accepts defeat. She was sure to be stronger next time. He thanked her for her confession, but the Baichu sister showed up and called him a pervert. He asked not to express himself like that in public. Yizhan disagreed, and Yuran asked about the injuries. Suyo replied that everything was fine. His friends stood back and watched, but really, they came first than the sisters. A detective appeared behind them and told them to stop gawking. The detective said he didn't care about Suyo's affairs and told him to keep up. He realized that he needed to keep an eye on Suyue after all. They had just arrived, but he had already raised the rank and defeated Chen Jing. He said that there was one more place to visit. He also said that the difference between Fantasia and this world is that there are more cities, and their neighborhoods are just as dangerous as the cities themselves. They saw monsters. Detective Wang told them to remember that this is reality. If they die, they can't be reborn. The protagonist liked this world, because here, even false ginseng oozed spiritual energy. Such plants could be exchanged for spiritual jade, so he wanted to pick it up. But his plant was stepped on by Sun Qi, who said he saw a phoenix fly that way. The protagonist hopes that the plant is not dead yet and can be useful. But it was stepped on again. It was Jinfan who said that it was a golden pheasant. Su Yu got angry and shouted that these were medicinal herbs and the source of their income. Sun Qi said that no one wanted false ginseng, because they wouldn't get much for it. And also, the circulation of spiritual jades has not yet been formed here, as long as they can't be exchanged for anything good. Jinfan said that they would still have time to get spiritual jade for the quests. There's an exchange market in this world where you can get them too. He realized it was pointless, and told them not to get in the way of collecting them. And the guys remarked that he was talking like a senior citizen. They decided to explore the new map. The protagonist finally got rid of them, so he decided to check out what else was growing here. He smelled the disgusting odor of some wild beasts. A red window appeared, warning that a beast invasion had begun, and everyone needed to return to the city for shelter immediately. He jumped on the wall and asked what was wrong. Yiran replied that she was glad he was okay. Yizhan asked if his friends had returned, calling Jin Fan a four-eyed man. He replied that they hadn't, and he thought they were here. He detective checked and said there was no bioinfo of them within the city fortifications. Su Yo asked the detective to explain what a beast invasion was. The beasts of prey, including the humanoid beasts, formed a semblance of an army. The reason for their appearance is still a mystery. Once they get together, they immediately begin their invasion during seasonal animal migrations. They can attack the territory of a city. If anyone is not in the city fortifications, there will be no survivors. Yizhan asked if there was any way to inform them to hide. The detective replied that all means of communication are blocked during the beast invasion. They could only hope for luck. Su Yeo said he would follow them. The detective stopped him and told him he couldn't stand up to them alone. It's like certain death. He threw back his hand and told him to let go. He doesn't care about entreaties because his friends' lives are now in danger, and he must get them back. He jumped off the wall and the detective yelled for him to come back. Meanwhile, Jinfang had managed to kill 13 beasts when Sun Qi had 15. There were too many of them. Jinfan said that they wouldn't be able to count who won and who lost, but Jinfan wasn't going to slow down. There was a monster behind him that he didn't notice. It threw him off, after which it wanted to attack Sun Qi. But Su Yeo appeared on his head and tried to pierce through his tough skin. He jumped off the big kite. He told Sun Yi to find a thistle to grind and apply to the wound. That's the monster he's taking on. He gave him blow after blow in different places, but it was all pointless if it didn't penetrate his skin. The monster is getting stronger for now. But in the end, he was able to cut the serpent with his sword. Sun Qi was surprised and asked how he did it. But there were other monsters behind him that he didn't notice at first. He didn't care about that because they were weak. But the monsters suddenly retreated. It could have been their win, but it wasn't that simple. Jin Fan said that this beast army is made up of ferocious predators, but they retreat in a very organizational manner. Therefore, they are being commanded by someone. Sun Qi said he had just heard the sound of a horn in the distance. He wondered who their main target was, if not them. Jin Fan said he didn't know. Su Yeo thinks about who can control the beasts and their purpose. Their target was the eastern city. The detective commanded that the wounded be brought inside and told the archers to shoot. This time around, the beast invasion takes place in a very different way. They didn't have siege ladders and catapults before. And also, previous reports have not mentioned that they show signs of advanced intelligence. He spotted a monster that had a horn. The detective thought they had decided to use massive offensive tactics this time. Yizhen said that the enemy's attacks were becoming more and more brutal each time. Yiran replied that reinforcements from other cities would take time to arrive, and her spiritual energy was almost exhausted. Something was looming over them from above. They had time to retreat. Yizhan thought it was the enemy attacking again, but it wasn't. It was Sun Qi and Jin Fan, who was shouting that he would finish Su Yue off for throwing him around like that. Yiran said it was good that they were okay. Yiran asked why they fell out of the sky. He replied that they were flying to Chenghuang, but he shouted to the detective to bring Suyo back, for he wants to make the beast retreat. The detective didn't understand why he was being heroic, or if he was looking for death. Yiran said that the beast invasion is happening in some strange way. Attacks flew at the monster with the gore. He reflected them and shouted. It was Suyo and Chenghuang who wanted to provoke the monster. He told her to ride north. She asked if it was to the same place. He answered that he did. This was the place where they first met. But it also contains weapons capable of destroying an invasion of beasts. But they were hit by the attack. It was the same monster with the horn. He spread his wings and flew after them. Chenghuang couldn't throw him off his tail. Her master combined energies, the spiritual energy of this world and his well-regarded, causing him to make a breakthrough. He said that this strange beast was not worth being afraid of. He let the created arrows fly, but they didn't hit the target. The monster wanted to attack them, but for some reason, Suyo started laughing. The lad said he only wanted to awaken the lord of these glaciers with his arrows. A blue flame appeared from behind the monster. It was the same overlord. She shot a beam at him. He turned the monsters into ice. While the overlady dealt with the monsters, they came down. He noticed the wound on Chenghuang. Afterward, he bandaged her with a scarf and said we'd have to be patient for now. They will wait for this lady to calm down and he will seek spiritual herbs to cure her. She's finally gone. The power of the overlord was devastating, and if she came to their world, the protagonist thinks the planet would go back to the Cambrian period. But fortunately, there is a barrier between their world and the world of mountains and seas. Chenghuang said she found the corpse of a bat. She asked if there was anything to eat in it. He broke the ice on the can. It was a bottle of milk, and he most likely took it from the humans. Only the protagonist didn't know why the leader of the beast invasion wanted it. Chenghuang was upset that it was empty and there was nothing to eat. There was a message on his bracelet. It rudely asked if he was alive and told him to go back. He didn't need Chenghuang yet, so she came back. She told him to take care of himself and to call on her immediately in case of danger. That's where his friends and the detective ran. Fanjin and Sunchi were in tears and went to hug him and thought he was dead. He told them to stop, for he had returned. Yijin said they were very worried about him. Yiran says he's fine, and they'll go back to town. He wondered if he had offended her in some way. The detective yelled that he had left town unauthorized and refused to return to the team, so he would be punished for it. Suyo said that he was right about everything, and he was at fault. But he pointed to the resource boxes and said he was willing to make amends. Suyo said that he had lured the beast troops to the snowy mountain range, and the local lordess had exterminated most of them. He also brought something else very valuable. Among the glaciers, he discovered a spiritual fruit that will help with pumping techniques. He can give it to the detective. The detective took the fetus, and the protagonist has hope. He said attempted bribery of a person in the line of duty is an aggravating circumstance. This fruit will go with the rest of the trophies for the good of the community. The guy was walking through the night market. He thought that for all this, he had gotten a ban from the city and some spiritual jade. His flow technique eats up too much jade, so he didn't have enough of it. He's left to sell pills from his memory palace, but no one wants them, because now everyone is practicing their skills with VR goggles. Someone told him that even great heroes have hard times. That was the girl from the arena. Now everyone's talking about how he fought off the invasion. She didn't realize he was actually the poor guy. She started poking at the pouch and asked if that was all he'd earned all day. He asked if she was paid in jade for teasing. She hit a nerve and told him not to worry because it was just jade. If he wants to know where else to earn it, let him follow her. She said that the jade treasure shop was the main shadow market in this world. They went inside, and she said to greet the customers. The guy remembered that Jin Fan had said that it was possible to obtain spiritual jade through other channels. He noticed that the shopkeeper had many different hobbies. A woman approached them and recognized Suyo, calling him a warrior. It was Wang Yuemin. She asked why they had come to her shop. He replied that he would not buy anything. She replied that he could just walk around and look. The shopkeeper asked what Chenjing was doing and why she had brought a beggar here. After all, she didn't have a shelter for the destitute here. The girl replied that she had brought her a suitable candidate for the job she needed. The guy asked if she buys her own stuff. Mrs. Wang replied that she might buy it if he offered more value than she had. A chi-strengthening pill appeared in his hand. The woman didn't think she would ever be able to see the legendary fortification pill. She would give 6,000 spirit jades for one pill, and she asked if he agreed. The protagonist knows that this pill will come in handy for pumping the most novice of beginners, and he is surprised that she is willing to shell out such a sum of money for it. Chenjing asked why this pill was so good that she wouldn't even check the goods first. Mrs. Wang replied that since the store opened, she had seen many treasures and read a bunch of different books, and she would recognize this pill from 1,000. The guy says he admires her powers of observation. She thinks he's a fool for giving her away for 6,000. If she puts it up for auction and gets a couple of guys to raise the price, she could get rich. Su Yo told her to wait. She asked if he had something and told him to get it. He pulled out a bottle and said he'd be uncomfortable lugging it around and asked if she could buy this. In fact, there were many more in his memory palace, but it was better to sell a little at a time so as not to land the price. She was surprised that there were so many of them. Now she has no place to put this many pills. He apologized and said he didn't think the sight of 200 pills would scare her so much. He said he would offer them to someone else. The shopkeeper stopped him and said she was just embarrassed to see so many pills. She bought pills from him. He said it's nice to do business with friends. She doesn't think she's his friend because she just grabbed a discount. He also placed the bottle he had taken from the leader of the beast invasion in front of her. The girl with blue hair said that it was just a bottle and there was nothing special about it. Mrs. Wang noticed that there were some traces of dirt on the walls of the bottle and it didn't look like mold. The guy replied that since their ringleader had the bottle, he wouldn't have taken it with him on the attack if it wasn't of any value. He thinks the most important thing is inside. They took out the contents of the jar. Mrs. Wang saw something. A guy and a girl asked what was in there. She replied that it was some kind of mineral powder that she hadn't seen before. She didn't know if half-beasts could process minerals so finely. Chen replied that they were dealing with highly evolved zooids. Su Yeo said that they might have people helping them. Detective Wang tells them that the scientific community can't tell the exact reason for the appearance of the Zeviroids and their purpose. At present, they know that the leader is not thinking of cooperating with humans and is very hostile. Their main goal in the next mission is to figure out the appearance of the beast invasion. He counts on every one of them, regardless of position. The guy thinks he's lived so long in the world, but suddenly, there's a mineral he's never seen before. A pointer flies in his direction. He caught it without much effort. He's also thinking about where the factory to process it might be. The detective yells irritably and says that this is especially concerning to him, and that he shouldn't go off on his own. Su Yo replied that doesn't matter if he is getting results. The detective replied that there's no arguing with that. He thought that if the guy had an equally outstanding partner with him, his results would be even better. He has Yuran assigned to him. They would work together in the vanguard, and they needed to find out how the werewolves were controlling the invasion. She replied that she wouldn't let Su Yo out of her sight. They went on a mission. Su Yo said that they hadn't really talked since the last invasion. Yuran turned her head away from him. He thinks when was the last time a girl took such a grudge against him? Because it was a long time ago. The girl said that Zveroids had been appearing in the area a lot lately. He offered to be the first to go scouting if she was worried. He had experience, after all. The girl seemed to ignore him. He didn't understand what to do and how he provoked such an attitude. But suddenly they heard something. They went to the sounds, realized that the Zooids had decided to launch an attack again. Turns out they gather beasts for invasion using powder. He told her to go back to headquarters and report the situation. Now he realized what traces of powder were on the walls of the bottle, the invasion of the beasts he takes upon himself. The commander saw his attack and managed to block it. Suddenly the commander spoke. He told the guy to die. He spotted their attack. After that, it was easy to deal with them. He sent out sharp golden blades. They hit their commander, and he went down. He felt the spiritual energy of the element of earth. The commander tried to escape with a disappearing technique. The guy attacked again. He headed straight for their commander. The commander threw the very same powder to his side. Su Yo called it just a childish trick. He killed their commander. He noticed that the powder caused all the beasts to become excited and furious. If they want carnage, they'll get it. He takes down some beasts with ease. Another one attacked from behind him. He noticed that. The moment Su Yue wanted to attack him, the monster was pierced by an arrow. It was Yiren's arrow that worried him. He yelled at her to get out of here. But there was already a monster behind her. Suho yelled at her to hide. But suddenly there was a collapse. Su Yeo, Yiren, and the tiger went down. She said she might have been standing over the entrance to some hidden place. He was telling her to come back. She called him a jackass. She said he was always silently walking alone into the thick of things. She knows he is very strong and stronger than all of them, but she wants him to treat himself a little more gently. She and everyone else doesn't want to see anything happen to him. He guesses she's worried about him. He apologizes to her and thinks he's been living as a loner for too long. He hasn't felt like this in a long time. They heard something. A monster with a sack came out of the cave. He's not a problem for them at all. Powder and rocks fell out of the bag. The guy thinks this is where they do the mineral processing. She called out to him. After which she said it was getting hot in here. She flipped him off. He said their age difference was too great and it was wrong. She replied that his body was cool. He realized that this mineral is dangerous because it causes excitation of the nervous system and loss of reason, even in people. He wanted to get her out of intoxication. His method worked. She came to her senses and asked what was happening to her. She looked at her clothes and didn't understand how this had happened. Su Yeo replied that these minerals make the blood boil and awaken passion, which caused her to unbutton her clothes and jump on top of him. She slapped him. He thought he'd said the wrong thing and she'd taken offense again. They went out to where the minerals are mined. Yiren said that those malignant minerals are mined here. He replied that as long as the ore vein existed, there would always be a risk that the beast would fall under the influence. She saw the monster that had discovered them. She shot him. The others heard him squeak. A rockfall separated them. He shouted that he would come back for her soon. The rockfall continued unabated. He told Cheng Huang to protect Yiren. He was attacked by a humanoid monster. He dodged as usual. Su Yeo said that because of him, his girlfriend is now worried. He attacked the guy. Su Yue realized that he hadn't missed. He's cleared a path for himself. This monster will not abandon his silicates. The little monsters are clearly afraid of him, and he seems to be their boss. It means that's what the guy wants. He shouted to the monster that he was here, and stood near his main treasure. The humanoid monster became angry. As it turns out, he understands everything. The guy used his technique and a seal appeared above the monster's head. 2 dragon heads emerged from the seal. They struck right at the monster. The guy walks up to him and says he wants to talk quietly, but if he moved, he'd get hurt. You can tell by the look on the monster's face that he's ready to listen. Su Yeo showed that they, the humans, didn't need their rocks. The monster is required to guard the place and not let anyone but humans in. Then all the silicates will go to the monster. He crushed the stone in his hand and asked if what he had said was clear, and the monster bowed his head. From the look on his face, the guy realized about his obedience. At sunset, he, Cheng Huang, and Yiren were heading back. He told her to hold on tight so she wouldn't fall. She replied that she understood. He felt as if he had forgotten something. He must be past the age at which memory begins to fade. He said to bring the silicates with him for research. She laughed. He told her to stop laughing because it was accidental and he usually remembered everything. She didn't believe him. Su Yeo remembers when she gave him cookies and the box was wrapped in orange ribbon. She asked what they tasted like. He replied that the flavor was amazing. He ate the mint and chocolate and gave the rest to his friends. She repeated his words about what he had given them. He replied that they had not had breakfast in the morning. She slapped him again and told him to watch the road. Su Yeo didn't understand her at all. He didn't know if she was offended again. Yiren held out to him the sample that was in the fabric of her dress. She called him weird because he remembers things he doesn't have to. They returned to headquarters. The detective said that special thanks must be given to the 2 of them this time, for they had discovered the mine and the silicates with which the beastmen had controlled the beast invasion. The woman told her assistant to cancel the next appointment, but she said there would be a banquet at Kao's house. She replied that she wasn't going there, and she needed to get her girls home. Jiang Shan said that they had handled the beast invasion case well. She added that the dungeon raises questions. A detective asked what was wrong with it. They've encountered many dungeons, but this is the first time she's seen monsters avoid contact with humans on their own initiative. She replied that there was a possibility that the main character had tamed that monster. The detective couldn't believe that a rookie could tame a dungeon monster. He didn't think she had such a well-developed imagination, and he would keep a record of this conversation as a memory. She replied that Su Yeo was a lot stronger than they realized. Jiang Shan ordered him to watch him at all times. She's also already figured out who blew up the gate, and they have already penetrated the realm of mountains and seas. Sun Qi came into Su Yeo's room and said that the sisters were taken away by their mother. He replied that they only came to the kingdom to return to their parents. Sun Qi asked why he was so indifferent since the girl had given him cookies. Su Yeo said that their birth mother had taken them in, and there was no need for him to get involved in their family affairs. Even in the meeting, the guy wasn't serious, which surprised those present. But what was even more surprising was that he drew a portrait of Yiren. The detective asked if he was listening to him. Su Yeo replied that he was. Sun Qi realized Su Yue's pretense of pretending not to care. He showed him the cactus and said it looked like one of the sisters. After that, he showed her a girl similar to Yiren. Su Yeo said he was going to go freshen up. But then Sun Qi asked Yizhan where they were. The guy immediately turned around and asked where they were. Sun Qi replied that it was a prank and no one called him. The main character tied him up and called him a sick bastard. He walked down the street and wondered what was in Sun Qi's mind. Especially in the world of mountains and seas. Where would you find sisters here? But but he somehow made it right to their house. Without realizing it, he went out to their house and thought he'd better leave. A man came in and said he knew him. That was Yiren and Yizan's father. He takes advantage of the increased concentration of spiritual energy here and conducts his research. The man brought him to the house where his wife was. The woman was clearly not happy to see him, but greeted him nonetheless. The guy realized he wasn't welcome here. The man asked if he came here to check on their daughters. Suyo replied that he had, and he wanted to see them. The woman replied that she couldn't. She had been making arrangements all day to get them into the Jasper Cloud School. The man objected that such things should be discussed with him first. The woman replied that he should do his bioelectronics. She sent them away so that they would not interfere with him, and they were not strong enough to survive in this world. The man called the woman Mu Yun and said it was a total outrage. Mu Yun replied that she did it for their safety. He used to send them to the real world himself for the same reason. He replied that back then they still didn't know anything about invading beasts and it was dangerous to leave them here. She set her glass on the table. She yelled at him and told him he was repeating everything she just said. He also never once asked her opinion about it. Suyo said it was getting late and wanted to leave. But first he noticed the ice. After that and the flames that were behind him, he noticed the parents, who were definitely having an unchildlike argument. She said he was only thinking about what research he could do in the world of mountains and seas, and he didn't care about them. He told her to stop, for they had a guest. She answered him that the ragamuffin was offering their daughters steamy cultivation. She asked why he had let him into their house in the first place. The guy replied that she had it all wrong. The man said she needed to know her measure in scandal. After all, she was out of line. Suyo thinks he came here for nothing. He stopped their attacks. He told them to stop already. The husband saw his wife falling, and he immediately caught her. She told Suyo to mind his own business and called him a ragamuffin again. He replied that he was not a ragamuffin, and their daughters had come here to be with them. After all, practicing cultivation in the real world right now is very difficult, which she herself knows. The woman replied that she just wanted the best for them, and for them to be safe. The man said he understood, and apologized that he had too little time because of the research. They kept repeating each other's names, Ji Xuan and Mu Yun. Xiao Bai, who was the representative of the Jasper Cloud School, called back. The woman asked if her girls had made it. Xiao Bai replied that they had failed her. They were attacked on the way. The eldest daughter's life is in no danger, but the youngest found herself on the path of life and death. Yiren lay there breathing heavily. Mu Yun was very angry and said that they had signed their own death sentence since they dared to touch her daughter. Ji Xuan tried to calm her down and said that there was no proof, so one couldn't be sure that they were the ones who did it. The guy asked who they were. The man replied that it was the Cow family. Just like their family, they also moved to this world and are big players in the financial and pharmaceutical business. The woman said that this family kept convincing them to work with people from country A, and they did not agree. Suyo said that they need to show restraint because they are counting on impulsive reactions. Cheng Huang asked to come out, for she had something to say. He asked her what was wrong. She replied that the girl's body had been poisoned by the devil Qi. Devil Qi people in ancient times explained the appearance of hallucinations in mentally ill people, and Yiren was just a little weak. Cheng Huang replied that she understood that for the current times, it sounded like something out of superstition, but she had been familiar with this phenomenon since she was born. The devil's Qi washes away spiritual energy and erases consciousness. She also said that that girl had strong spiritual energy, but if they didn't rid her of the devil Qi soon, they might lose it. He asked if she knew how to do it. She replied that at one time an imperial healer had treated it with chalcedony water. He said he also already remembered what it was treated with. He was near the dungeon registration platform. Previously, no one cared about ordinary dungeons, but now in this world, events were moving fast. Someone approached the guy and said that the main star of the mountain and sea world was here, and that is Suyo. It was Cao Xingyi, the second son of the most powerful family of this world. He asked if the main character came here for the legacy of the dungeon. Suyu replied that he didn't know what it was, and he just liked discovering new places. Shinhei replied that he likes people who can adapt. He admired how the protagonist destroyed the beast invasion and offered to become his human. He rejected his offer and said he wanted nothing to do with that family. Xinghei's guard said that he shouldn't show contempt towards his family. After all, his master had treated him with respect. He wanted to attack the guy, but some shadow appeared in front of him. She stopped him and told him that fighting outside of the tournament didn't give him a dungeon pass according to the rules. Xinghei and the guard he called Uncle Cheng left. She turned around and recognized him. It was Zhou Yi. After he saved her, she had been looking for a meeting with him. She couldn't think that she would see him in this world. He asked if Chief Inspector Wu had sent her here. The girl replied that yes, because it would be good for her to take a quiet job. But even as a receptionist, she has to face people like Chao Xingge. Su Yeo asked if there was a tournament to enter the dungeon. She replied that it was a legacy dungeon, so there were quotas set up to enter. And in order to screen people out, a battle arena is set up here. And to get into the dungeon, you need to defeat 10 opponents during the day, which is what the guy's doing now. The crowd couldn't believe that he was knocking everyone out with one punch. She was shocked that this was already the 9th opponent. He said to call the next one. His opponent was Chen. He said that any road is narrow for enemies, but here they will not miss each other. The guy replied that he didn't have time to chat with him. Chen called him a defiant brat. He aimed a slashing vortex at the guy. He caught those cards. As it turned out, the spell on the cards didn't carry any spiritual energy. The cards sent a wave at him. It was like he was under hypnosis. The man said that this technique was just calculated to throw the enemy into confusion, which he had learned in the J country. But a map appeared in front of the man. The guy asked if he was hoping to defeat him with card tricks. He also said that this technique is very old, so he traveled to another country for nothing to get it. The man said it's a very energy-consuming technique, and it's not available to everyone. A card flew into his head and the guy said he was tiring him out. He decided to use his technique to finish this fight. The card on the man's forehead began to glow. There was an explosion. The man was thrown into the wall. The girl knows that Chen was a strong man. It seems that Su Yo has become even stronger since he was in Fantasia. He asked Zhou Yi if he could get a pass. Jin Fan asked Su Yo where he was. Yuran's condition is getting worse. Her pulse is slowing down and her blood pressure is dropping. Now is not the time to go out somewhere while she is in this condition. The guy told him to take care of her family for now. Su Yo needs to act faster because he might not make it in time. Zhang Shan walked into Wang Hao's office, complaining that as soon as she left them, there was an emergency. The detective admitted it was his fault. He told me to stop telling him obvious things. Someone rushed in and said that he had something urgent to report to the detective. Wang Hao wanted to object because they were in a meeting right now. It was Sun Qi. Yizhan sent him a message. The girl said it was very dark and scary in that place. She screamed that it wasn't her. They arrived at the scene of the accident. The detective told the inspector that, according to the accounts of the Jasper Cloud School students, their car had been attacked, after which the car had tipped over on its side. She asked if he thought something was strange. He replied that such a sneaky ambush method was not really the Kwao family's style. Squabbles between major houses are commonplace, but they wonder how the students of Jasper Cloud School ended up near the path of life and death. This is a public highway. It is not the busiest, but it is still in a sector whose safety is ensured by the city authorities. Nothing like this incident has ever happened here. The inspector told him to compare the fighting power of the school and the Kao family. The detective said that their fighting power was as good as the attackers, but they were not prepared for the path of life and death nearby. She told him to find him information on tectonic plate changes under the gorge near this trail. He noticed a rapid change he couldn't believe. The detective held the device out to her, and she certainly hadn't expected that after what she'd seen. The inspector told him to urgently send out letters to all 5 senior inspectors and prepare to rescue Baichu Yizhen. Meanwhile, Su Yo was still near the door. Someone approached him. It was Chao Xingye. He was asking why Su Yue was taking the place of someone who really wanted the legacy since he didn't know anything about it. He called the main character flat-out fake. He just opened the doors and went in there. Shinhee shouted at him not to dare ignore him. He asked Cheng Wang where the water he needed was. She told him to go straight ahead, cross the bridge, and he would find the spring. A guy approached him and said he couldn't get to the legacy. They tried going deep into the dungeon, but everything is even. He tried to stop him somehow from stepping on their rake. There was a monster. A fireball flew out of his mouth. The stranger was frightened and said they were finished. His sword appeared in the protagonist's hand. He said he would give the monster a choice, which was to get out of the way or die. But the monster clearly chose the second option. The guy threw punches, after which the monster collapsed to the ground. The stranger was surprised that the fire serpent had died, since they had fought it so much. He shouted that the serpent was dead and they could head inland to search for the legacy. Shinhee went up to him and asked him who killed him. The stranger replied that it was the same guy who had repelled the beast invasion. He was surprised that Su Yue had just entered the dungeon and had already killed the fire serpent. Su Yeo heard some kind of sound. Shinhee walked behind him and said that he was killing such monsters as a warm-up. If the fire serpent came to him first, he would chop it into 3 pieces with a single blow, and his older brother would leave nothing behind. Su Yeo said to stay away from anyone. Xingyi asked why if the bridge is fine. Xingyi asked if he was afraid that a genius from the Cow family would leave him without prey. And also the fight for the legacy should be a fair competition. This short-sighted guy didn't even notice what was underneath. Even the main character thinks he's just a moron. He sharply pushed Xingyi away, and the bridge was destroyed by a fiery blaze. The protagonist thinks they're blown away. This serpent, even at its last breath, was able to pull off such a powerful attack. Xingyi called Suho selfish, for he destroyed the bridge to take all the loot for himself. The protagonist has no time for childish grudges, for he has to hurry to fetch water. Xingyi shouted for him to stop. He told the others to find something to build a new bridge if they didn't want all the loot to go to Suyo alone. But the men saw something that made their faces twist. The guy asked what they weren't afraid of. He started to talk about heritage, but didn't finish. He saw what was right behind him. He just wanted to blow up that dungeon when he got to the legacy. Suyo and Chenghuang reached the spring. He decided to try it out on himself first. She said that's not how this water is applied. But who would have thought that by drinking this water, he would have another breakthrough? Chenghuang now knew for sure that there was clearly something wrong with him, even if he looked like an ordinary person. He dialed up the water and said he just needed to know how to handle it. He also needs to bring more with him. They heard cries for help. Meanwhile, Chief Inspector Wu asked Jiang Shan if she really wanted to send the Aura warriors of the 6 counties on the path of life and death for the sake of one girl. She asked Inspector Wu, is he really that cruel? Beichu Yizhan is an unremarkable girl, and he will just let her go missing and die so easily. He told her not to break the tragedy, for this was not the time for her performances. They had sent several groups to the trail before, and they all disappeared there without exception. It takes at least 10 years to raise an Aura warrior to go on the trail, and they can't waste such valuable resources on rescue operations. Inspector Jiang showed pictures that would make him change his mind. They were taken 2 days ago. The man couldn't believe his eyes. He didn't understand how it was possible. The area of the path of life and death is rapidly expanding. It's up to him whether to send people there or not, but time is not on his side. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Xingyi was captured by a stone monster. He told the others that his brother would give them any amount of money for his rescue. The monster threw a punch, causing them to fly off. They stared in consternation and bewilderment at the trail left by his blow. Of course, after that, they decided to just save their lives. Xingyi shouted at them that they could get a high position. The monster had him in his fist. He didn't know how to get out. But suddenly he heard a shout telling him to put his head down. The sword left a hole in the stone monster's arm and the guy was able to free himself. It was Suyo. He asked if he needed his helping hand. Xingyi shouted, saying that he just decided to seize the moment and gloat over him. The protagonist replied that he wasn't. Suyo said that if it were him, he would be worrying about something else right now. Xingyi had broken into that monster's house and also promised to blow up its habitat. Therefore, he couldn't win so easily. It was then that the silly guy realized that this was the legacy. He said it's simple then. Xingyi used a spiritual net. His device restrained the monster. Suyo sighed and asked if he really thought the legacy would contain his nether regions. He replied that this spiritual net was made by better craftsmen specifically for his family. It was designed to restrain monsters of any size, so he thought the legacy would be his. He threw his chain around his arm, but the monster simply pulled him through. He pulled the boy behind him, after which he landed on the floor unable to do anything. The protagonist told the monster that his brother Lu to stop beating up babies. Suye barely recognized him, for no one wields a sword as clumsily as him. The guy said that he just saw a stone stela nearby with the inscription, "Here rests the soul of a warrior of the Lu clan beheading demons." He told him to stop taking offense and pretending it wasn't him. It was like the monster wanted to attack the guy. In an instant, they were transported to a separate space. The brown-haired guy said he came to his dungeon to get water to cleanse his girlfriend's system. He congratulated him, for he had found the very spring in which he washed himself. He noticed his face twisted. Suyo replied that he just didn't expect to find a thatched roof gazebo in the dungeon, and he asked how the guy with brown hair ended up here. He replied that he and his wife had decided to live away from civilization, and had moved to the Amishan Mountains. No one knew that one day, one of the caves there would be connected to the world. As for that stone stela, at that time, he had actually killed demons. They were dark creatures that devoured soul and consciousness. But one day, his body weakened so weak that even bathing in that spring couldn't restore it. His wife died for the same reason. He has lost his body, and has only his spirit and soul left. He doesn't know where the rumors that there is a legacy in his dungeon originated, but even a lie repeated many times becomes the truth. He asked where he was already going. Suyo replied that he had someone to save and was already delayed. The guy asked if he had someone in his heart, since he wasn't that kind-hearted before. Suyo only waved and said that it was none of his business. He asked if the main character would mind if he went along with him. The boy replied that as he wished. He returned and golden rays began to erupt from the monster's body. Suyo said that the legacy liked him better. It was already night. The man asked Qian if Shingi had returned. Qian replied that he had gone to the dungeon to get his heritage and called the man father. The man said that he would surely achieve what he wanted because he was very gifted. Qian said that Uncle Chen had sent word. Shingi returned empty-handed and did not meet his father's expectations. The man replied that he didn't believe it and he couldn't leave his family for Qian. He asked his son to help him stand up, for he must organize things so that Shinhei would be his heir, but he felt a gun pressed against his head. Qian said he wouldn't agree with him. At that moment, a shot rang out and there was a lot of blood. The man said he would take care of his family and brother. An unknown hooded woman walked in and congratulated him on being the head of the family. He asked if she had figured anything out. She revealed that Suyo has gotten the legacy, and he is also closely related to the Bai family and the operations department. If he is not eliminated soon, he could become a problem. The Bai couple stood outside the operating room. Qian came over to them and said that he too had to take care of his sick father lately, so he understood exactly how they felt. She shouted, "For he shouldn't be here," and Mu Yun told him to get out. Qian said he knows they had a difficult relationship with his father, but he is now the head of the family and hopes they can put all past disagreements behind them. Jai Shen that his family had been pestering them for years, so things wouldn't be so easy to fix. Qian said they were required to share information about the ancestral spiritual canon, and then the Cao family would guarantee better medical coverage for their daughter. As soon as she heard the name, she said he was no different from his father. The man tried to reassure his wife. A gun appeared near her forehead. The man said he wasn't interested in other people's wives, and it could ruin the friendship between their families. He already wanted to challenge her to a duel, but then Suyo said to let him pass and for them to sort it out somewhere else. After all, this is a hospital here. He approached Jixuan and showed the letter of guarantee of the operations department. So he asked for permission to handle Baichu Yuran's treatment. The man checked and it was true there were signatures of Chief Inspectors Xiazin and Wu. The guy asked to trust him and he will surely save the girl. He walked into the office. They trust him and hope he knows what to do. Xian swept up that he was a curious kid after all. He had 2 whole senior inspectors vouching for him. After his absence, the girl's hair turned white. The devil Qi had entered too deeply into her. He couldn't keep her alive for long with just spiritual jade and a few other things. A little more, and it would be impossible to bring her back. But he won't let her die. The contents of the jar floated in the air. The water enveloped her body. The guy started exorcising the devil's Qi. I think it's starting to work, but something went wrong. He thinks it's strange. Her pulse is normal. Her spiritual energy has recovered, but her body is still cold. But a brother came along and said that devil Qi doesn't only affect the internal organs. It also clouds the mind, devours the soul. He also added that the girl's soul and consciousness are severely damaged. If she wakes up, she'll be like a zombie. Guy replied that the lost part of her soul did not need to be replenished. The man slapped him on the forehead and told him to stop fooling around. He said that a suitable donor soul was needed to restore the soul. He offered to use his soul to save her, as it was the only way. Su Yeo replied that it was not necessary to use his soul specifically. He said to return him the palace in his memory. The guy replied that there was no time to look for another soul. The main character said he couldn't. He just picked everything out of that dungeon. There are still so many things in the world he hasn't seen. He calmed the guy down and told him to do what he had to do as a doctor. He shouldn't worry about him since he's been dead for a long time. Lu is grateful that he was able to have one last drink with his friend. If his hesitation causes her to die, Suyo will regret it for the rest of his life. Suyo feels like his old friend can't be changed, and it's probably all for the best. The guy said that when he first came to the Chu Kingdom, he and his wife helped him. They almost didn't understand his accent, but they didn't reject it. Lu replied that he had done a lot for them in those days too, and today he would thank him for it with his soul. He disappeared and just then he said goodbye to his brother Su. He felt her hand touch his robe. Jiran said she was thirsty. Xian said that he had met him. He used to think that she had taste, but she was more primitive than that. She replied that the main character was a very complicated guy. He had even recently obtained a dungeon legacy and would have to be dealt with sooner or later. He called her Zrino. She's a top-notch hacker, so he asked her to check one guarantee letter sent from the operations department's address. Jin Fan and Suyo were yelled at by the detective because they forged the letter of guarantee. Jin Fan said that it was not difficult because the operational control system can be hacked even by a schoolboy. The detective told him to shut up because they had no idea how many hats would fly because of their prank. Suyo said that it was not his friend's fault and he was the one who made him do it. Jin Fan said not to listen to him, for he had done it himself to save the beauty. They kept going on, but then Jiang Shan walked in. She is with good news, for the girl is rapidly on the mend. She is also very sorry that none of them saw the faces of the chief inspectors at the meeting. She has a whole folder on theirs, with reprimands and requests and stuff. She's asking what she should do with it. If the boy's hunch is correct, all this waste paper will go in the trash, because their wise inspector has already sorted it out. She called him smart because she wouldn't waste her time sorting out paperwork from office rats. Jiang Shan said that Jizfan to join the technical department team, to have him set up their firewall so that no one else could hack them. The detective tried to stop her somehow. She replied that it was better not to fight them, but to win them over to her side. And for the protagonist, she has a special assignment. Thanks to his actions, many of the cockroaches in their office fussed. By exploiting vulnerabilities in the medical system, they embezzled public funds. She wants him to figure them out and nail them to the wall. The stranger asked the guy if he really wasn't going to work for the OP anymore. The protagonist replied that his dream was to devote himself to the development of Chinese medicine for the good of the country. His words were not too far from the truth. Suyo told Dr. Jiang that there should be 13 doctors at this meeting. She replied that she represents the opinion of all 13. That's just the kind of doctor he needs to observe. She offered to be honest. The guy didn't have a medical license, so she can't admit him. He didn't understand why she would do that. She must realize it was a sore subject for him. He began to beg her. It was very important to him. He asked if she could go to his side. She replied that she was aware of what he had managed to do in the real world. Without him, medicine would be without a strong specialist. But he should study Western medicine if he is determined to become a doctor. She asked Ayun if he had brought the needle. Ayun handed it over. She said that a doctor should not treat himself. They tried many treatments from traditional Chinese medicine, but nothing worked to get rid of the effects of being on the path of life and death. Chinese medicine is powerless. She showed the gelatin capsule they had received. He realized it was a remedy from Western medicine, but no sooner had she told what had happened to her illness than she suddenly fainted. The deputy told her to swallow the capsule, but the guy said it was too late. After all, her cervical region is already ossified. She won't be able to swallow the medicine. He said the only thing left to hope for is spiritual energy. She stopped and replied not to waste her energy. It's her life, and it's up to her. The assistant began to resent it, because even the best doctors of the world of mountains and seas could not do something. Especially she herself does not understand what to do. There was nothing he could do either. He told him to shut up because he's going to save her. He thinks she's a fool after what she said for her life. If the girl dies, he'll have to explain himself in front of Jiang Shan. And he doesn't want to look humiliated in front of that little thing. He thinks her illness might be caused by the devil Qi. After all, she got sick on the trail too. But her symptoms are nothing like Yiren. To begin with, he decided to direct his energy to the point of convergence of all meridians. Devil's Qi is also energy, but it is dark. It must be cleared from the paths of life force circulation. He feels that this is the most blocked place. He found parasites, and then it's a matter of technique. The man was telling him to stop, for he would demand that Su Yue be kicked out of the mountain and sea world. The guy replied that he was done, and now he could evaluate the result for himself. Ayun couldn't believe that the crystals on her body had disappeared. She spit up blood. He asked how she was feeling. She answered not to worry, for it was bad blood. She's feeling much better now. She praised the guy for handling the crisis situation perfectly. She asked why he was really here. Suyo replied that based on the investigation of the operations department, she had something to do with a recent shipment of smuggled medicinal plants. She said that she had never been involved in the procurement of medicines. She did not understand why her name was in this investigation. He always bought the medicine. The doctor asked if he did it. Ayun replied that he did it because of her. She always allocated all the funds to research only, and didn't care about the staff at all. He just wanted to live like a normal person, not survive on a penny wage. That was enough for the protagonist. He would tell the rest to the researchers in the operations department. The girl thought she had embarrassed all her teachers. She didn't know how she would look in the eyes of the other doctors. Suho replied that it's not like that. She just hired a bad person. The doctor is still the best doctor, and her patients will still be grateful for her treatment. The girl thanked him for comforting her and saving her life. She asked if there was anything she could do to help him. He replied that he hoped she would allow him to act on her behalf, and also that she would tell him everything she had seen on the path of life and death. Sun Qi recorded a voice message and told Yizhen that her sister was fine. She's been very busy lately, so she's not contacting her. He also added that Inspector Jiang was getting ready to start the rescue operation, so they would meet soon. He sent a voicemail, but it's just not clear if she'll be able to listen to them. His bracelet glowed. He thinks it was Yizhen. It's true. Now he needs to report it to Inspector Jiang immediately. He listened to her slurred words, where he could only make out the word found. An earthquake followed. It was felt by absolutely everyone. Mu Yun saw her daughter watching the changes. She said they should have woken her up first when she woke up herself and wanted to put something warmer on her. But the girl replied that they had started it. Yiran said that they should rather unravel the preternatural spiritual canon. Shueno said that they had been following Mu Yun around the clock lately. Qian asked what they had found out. The girl replied that something was very curious, and she told him to try to guess what was hidden in the suitcase. He replied that it was a puzzle with a clue to the preternatural spiritual canon. He did not understand why she was carrying it around with her in such turbulent times. The girl replied that it shouldn't concern him. Her superiors felt that they had been given a great opportunity. She hopes he'll help her with that. Qian replied that he could send people to fetch that suitcase. But before that, he asked why they needed the ancestral spiritual canon so badly. He thinks that he will have to seriously get his hands dirty since he knows about the K-Squad and their methods. The girl replied that he didn't need to know that, and asked where his younger brother had gone. The man said he didn't know, and he must be doing some nonsense. The girl said that not 7 days have passed since their father's death, and he is missing somewhere. It's not important to him. It's better for Xinhai to stay out of family matters. The doctor said that thanks to Su Yeo, she had already managed to catch people who were speculating on healing herbs and medicinal drugs. She had already sent the information to the operations department. It is now that they are being taken in the control vehicle, and as for confirming his medical qualifications, she will be able to ratify that a little later. She asked him to go to the healing plant warehouse today to help clean up the place. He said he would. He came to the warehouse. Other workers jumped on him and said their savior had come. He asked what happened here. They told him that someone had broken into the warehouse last night and turned the place upside down. The hero himself noticed that the place was a mess. He noticed the strange holes, as if whoever left them wanted to strike fear. He thinks that was the main purpose. The guy replied that he roughly understood what had happened. While they would take offense, he would figure out how to put things back in order. Unexpectedly, Shinhei was there. As it turned out, he just wanted to make a fuss and watch the doctors scurry around. Well, the main character messed him up again. He pisses him off. He wanted to go out to eat, but he was stopped by the main character. Su Yeo said he would help put things in order. The guy thought he was recognized. Su Yue told him to first separate the weeds from the medicinal herbs, and not to mess anything up. He looked kind of intimidating and asked if he understood. Shinhei replied that he did. He thinks he wasn't recognized. Su Yeo said that he had to clean them from the clay while sorting them. He asked why he was fiddling and told him to dry them. It was like the guy was mocking them and saying it was time to chop them up and he still hadn't dried them. He took off his mask and sent him out with his commands. He would do nothing more. Shinhei had already admitted himself who he was and that he was the one who made this mess. Even if the protagonist begs him to help, he won't do anything because people from his family don't serve cretins. Well, the guy wasn't surprised by that. He wanted to ask him something. Shinhei thought that he wanted to fight. He wanted to show what the second strongest talent from the Cao family could do. He noticed how fast Suyue was. He began to press down on his back. Shinhei didn't realize what was happening and saw the source of his spiritual energy. Suyeo told him to hold his breath, after which he told him to push. The guy knew that his spiritual energy was powerful, but he hadn't anticipated this. He said that this was proof that he was truly gifted by nature. Suyeo replied that he didn't know how to use his spiritual energy. If he learns how to do that, he will become an outstanding aura warrior. He offered him a work contract, hourly pay, meals and lodging included. An hour of work will equal 1 minute of learning from him. At the end of the week, another minute is a gift. Shinhei said it's cable terms. He said to think about his offer and he would wait for him. Toth sent him away. His bracelet glowed. It was the inspector. She said there was good news and bad news. She asked which one she should start with. He said the bad one. She'll start with the good one. They've made great strides in exploring the path of life and death. And it's more alive than dead. After the recent earthquake, it has widened again. The bad news is that the path of life and death has tagged Sun Chi. The boy asked how he had gotten involved. She replied that he had sent a message to Jiang, and after that signal hit, the trail began to widen. That earthquake was triggered by his message, and in order to avoid repeated incidents, they isolated him. In 2 days, they'll be heading out to find Jiang on the trail of life and death, and she thinks there's no way he'll miss such an exciting quest. Xingyi came and thought he wouldn't be his errand boy. But what he showed him was unforgettable. He hadn't realized how huge his potential was, and he wanted to do it himself. But then he heard a voice. It was Uncle Chen. He has something to report. His father had confided in him that it was Xinhe who he wanted as his heir, but he never got around to making a will. The guard investigated and found the gun. The guy should know who it belongs to. Meanwhile, Mu Yun thinks that by solving this mechanical puzzle, the key to unlocking the ancestral spiritual canon will be revealed. Because of this, her family is saving it. No one has been able to get to the clue yet. She has tried more than once to solve the puzzle, but everything is even. She doesn't know if her daughter will be able to open it. Mu Yun said that night. She talked about what they had started. She asked who they were. The girl said they hide in the dark. She doesn't know what they look like or what their goals are, but they are bad. She apologized for saying strange things again. Something had happened to her perception during her illness, so her consciousness was working in some unusual way. The woman replied that everything was fine, and the most important thing was that she was alive. A woman came in and said there was a package for Mu Yun. The girl somehow changed and said to wait. She replied that she knew the woman, for it was she who had attacked them that day. She attacked the woman and asked who sent her and for what purpose. Noticed that the woman was actually a doll. They were fooled. Mu Yun told the girl to look at the puzzle. She said the drawing on the turtle shell looked like a sea slug. It was actually a map of the path of life and death that can foresee the trajectory of change. The preternatural spiritual canon is within. The girl said that the path of life and death was a very strange and treacherous living organism. Many warriors had tried to study it, but few had managed to return alive, and those who did came back seriously ill. Mu Yun thinks that Jiang has been dead for a long time. She told her mother to give this map to the operations department because it would make it easier for them to find her sister. She said it is the key to the preternatural spiritual canon. If they got it, their house would become influential of any family or organization, including operational management. The girl explained that the ancestral spiritual canon was inside the path of life and death. If they handed it over, it would increase the chances of success of the rescue operation, and they would also stop being bothered by the Kao family and other Aura warriors who wanted it. The woman sighed and acknowledged her right. Right now, nothing could be more important than saving Ijanhas. The girl can't waste any more time. She can feel her sister distancing herself. The doll that was sent to them had a recording device in it. Qian said that they had no idea of the real value of the ancestral spiritual canon, since they could say goodbye to it so easily. They are willing to give up a great secret for a phantom opportunity to save a relative. He asked his brother if he agreed with him. The guy replied that he was just looking at who would be going on the path of life and death tomorrow. Cyan replied that it was rare to see him so enthusiastic. He told him to go to bed early, as they had a very difficult day tomorrow. Xinhe will be of great use to him tomorrow on the path of life and death. Xinhe replied that he needed to rest too. He said goodbye to him and left. He saw a message from Jueno. She was saying that he was planning to kill him. Chen was surprised that she had installed a hidden camera in his office. He realized that she didn't trust him at all, and he didn't seem to give any reason for doubt. He told her that he wouldn't succeed. After all, on the path of life and death, he would kill him and Suyo. The girl replied that she was looking forward to it. On the path of life and death, a doctor contacted him and congratulated him because he had been given a doctor's license, and she was finally able to develop a pill to treat the sick after visiting the trail. All thanks to him. He replied that she was the one who had worked it out. He had only helped. The doctor replied that even though they had the cure, anything could happen on the trail. She wished everyone a good journey and to be careful. He didn't expect so many Aura warriors to be called in for this rescue operation. There's practically an army here. He spotted Yaran in the crowd and thought it was good that she had come. After transplanting his friend's soul into her, she couldn't help but have complications. He decided to check it out. She asked what he was doing. He said it was nothing. They had a dangerous road ahead of them, and he was just fooling around to distract himself. She said it's called a chanterelle window. This is a common folk name, and the Taoists call this trigram the clutch of the Jade Lord. People use this gesture during a spell to expel unclean forces. She asked if he didn't know any of this. She also asked what he saw in the window. He replied that he saw her ruddy cheeks there. That was his official diagnosis, so she was already healthy and full of energy. He barely got out of it, and wondered how she knew so much. Yiren called him an asshole. He told her to stop because she'd have time to get mad at him, but now they needed to check the numbers. As expected, they have the same team. He said there are similar coincidences. He also said they were supposed to be assigned to groups of 3. They were one person short, but then a girl came up. She asked if they had a team like hers. It was Shui Shui. She recognized him immediately and called Susu. Yiren asked if they knew each other. She took a closer look at Yiren and said that he used to like girls with smaller breasts. This girl's name is Mu Shui. She's Suyo's ex-girlfriend. Yiren says what her name is, and that she is his girlfriend. She also hopes for fruitful teamwork. Zhu replied that she is funny, and hopes she will keep up with their pace. Zhang Shan's voice came through and she asked if everyone had found their group partners. The Eastern District Superintendent introduced herself and thanked everyone for their decision to participate in this search and rescue operation. She said the operation site is right behind them. There's a path of life and death in that gorge. They had been studying this mysterious phenomena for years, but because of the peculiarities of the local magnetic field, they had not made much progress. In this place, they can get sick, injured, or even die. Recently, the path of life and death has widened again and has come close to the city. They must act now. They now have a map of the life and death trail, which will increase their chances of successfully completing their objectives. As part of increasing the safety of the Aura Warriors, the operations department provided them with the latest equipment and healing herbs. She wished them good luck and a speedy return. The inspector came up to their team, for she had something to tell him. He told them to go. He would catch up with them. She asked how he liked his new outfit. The department was designing it day and night. She was designing uniforms for the girls. He asked if she called him to discuss the uniforms. He said he would go, because there wasn't a minute to lose. She stopped him. She said she can turn a blind eye to many things for the misdeeds of her favorites. Yizhan is one of them. But if someone were to pose a threat to the lives of people in the world of mountains and seas, but such a thing she would not turn a blind eye. Yiran said that all the groups had already left and he was the only one holding them back. Shui replied that he was once again letting people down at a key moment, just like he always did. Zui asked her how they met. Yiran replied that he had saved her life and had done so many times. The girl replied that he hadn't changed a bit. The girls were attacked by a monster. The girls took a moment to notice that he chose to stick right in the middle of the conversation, but as expected, the monster didn't have time to do anything. The guy killed him. He apologized for the delay. Now it's time for them to catch up. He told Yiran that he would be sure to bring her sister home. She agreed with that. Zhongshan spoke if Yizhan turned into someone who could pose a threat, because there was such a possibility. The protagonist must realize what he will have to do with her. Right now, there's a sea of blood in front of them, judging by the map. And to get to Yizhan, they need to go through it to the stairs. The protagonist has a hint that some pervert made these statues. Yiren said that the path of life and death used to be called the Abyss of Evil Spirits, where the souls of dead warriors reside. And the creatures here were infected with Devil Ki, becoming strong and bloodthirsty. Still, he was very surprised by her knowledge. Maybe it's a piece of Brother Lu talking. Xue replied that she didn't know where she got her fantasy from, but there was no such data. She added that in order to cross this puddle, they need to eat the growth on the top of the statue, which is called blood fruit. Suyo said he would go out to scout. If they were in danger, have them contact Inspector Jiang at once. They wished him good luck. Izui said that if she wanted to go home to her mom and dad, she wouldn't be offended by it. Yiren replied that she would never abandon her comrades at a time like this. She advised her to say less stupid things, as it hurt the unity of the team. The girls turned away from each other. The guy didn't think it was possible to walk on this liquid. All he has to do is get the bloody fetus, that should be easy. He walked over to the statue and broke the shell. He wonders if this really needs to be eaten. If it's to save Yizhen, then he'll have to be patient. Suddenly, the guy felt something. A memory flashed through his mind of the girl wondering what this place was, and she walked toward the stairs. After that, she was attacked by a monster. She screamed, and it was probably her last scream. The guy realized that this fetus used to be in this girl's head. Girls ran up to him and asked him what was wrong. He told them to stay back. Suddenly, a monster that looked like the monster from the memories appeared. The monster struck where Suyo was, but the guy managed to dodge. Shua said that she would deal with him herself. Yiren looked at the guy beside her. His body had already been affected by the devil chi. She didn't realize when it happened. The other girl threw a rope over the monster. In her opinion, he was big and stupid. Shui said that she definitely won't miss him. But right in front of her face, she spotted an arrow. It was dangerous, but she managed to dodge. Those arrows hit the monster. As you might expect, it was Yiran. Zhue yelled at her and asked if she did it on purpose or not. Yiran replied that she hadn't, but that didn't defeat the monster. The guy's foot stepped on him from behind and Su Yue called out to him. Apparently, this monster forgot there were 3 of them here, or he felt that Suho was not worthy of attention. He will pay for this foolishness with his life. The headless monster's body fell down and he jumped off of it. Zhui said that the path was now cleared and they could go on. Yiran asked what was wrong with his eye. After all, it could have been the destructive effect of the devil koi. The guy touched his face and said it was okay. He told her not to worry. All he has to do is eliminate the toxin. It's all about the fetus. He thinks it's best they don't tell them what it is yet. The fruit contains a small dose of devil's chi. It doesn't dissolve in the body, but it can clog the vital arteries. And once consumed, the spiritual energy and channels start to break down, and dark scales appear all over the body. He thinks the doctor caught her disease here. Xue said there was no such information there. No one can know what else lies ahead of them. Yiren replied that it was no big deal, because there was always a way out. Su Yeo said that there is no toxin in the fruit itself. There is only a small amount of toxic devil chi in the shell. You can get rid of such a small dose with breathing exercises. Actually, those white balls are the fruit, and the red substance is just a shell. Yiren noticed how pure the spiritual energy was. Now they knew what the fruit really looked like. There were just 3 of them, so enough for everyone. Yiren took his advice and took a sip. She said it tasted like an abomination. The guy replied that the nastier the pill, the more effective it was, and he's a doctor, so he wouldn't lie. She said he sounded like a village quack. Shu did notice that he had changed. Or perhaps she was the one who had changed. A man came up to them and told them to first take the fruit out of the bloody shell and then swallow it. Yiran asked what he was doing here. It was Chen, Xing'e, and Chen. Chen replied that it was thanks to her, because she had opened the puzzle then. She realized that he was the one who had planted that doll and called him sneaky. He replied that she was saving her sister, and they would get the preternatural spiritual canon. Everyone stays on the plus side, and if he was to make it to the end, he would need their help. He asked if they were willing to cooperate. Then behind their backs, the war puppets appeared. Xu said that it didn't sound like an offer of cooperation at all. Su Yeo told her to calm down, because he could hear something. It was a local animal invasion.